wanted science in it and all that kind of thing, and I went with Science Prime, and that was, yeah, big mistake. My wife was like, "No, you idiot! Like, science is boring."
Science Prime.
Yeah, science is boring. Like, science is like, people don't want to think about science. So it's like you're trying to make it cool. Which is fine, but like people don't think that right now. So it doesn't, like, marketing. It doesn't make any sense. I was like, damn.
Yeah, you turn off a lot of people when you talk about science.
I know, exactly. So that's kind of like
it's only STEM lords who fall in love with you.
Exactly. Think of that. Imagine.
That's why I just sprinkle it in with gaming content.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish I could play games. I have such bad hand-eye coordination.
Oh, I've been gaming since I was a small child. I grew up with the hand-eye coordination.
Yeah, I remember when I first came back to the country and my nephews were, I don't know, 5, 7, something like that. And they were playing with the console things.
The controllers?
The controllers. And,
the hand thing.
Yeah, the thing, you know. And I asked them to show me how to do it, and they just like said, "Here, do this." And I'm like, "Do what?" And they were off, and they were going, and they're like, you know, racing all over the screen and stuff like that. And I'm still trying to figure out how to fucking move the thing.
Yeah.
That's me with the keyboard.
Yeah, but even then, I just never get used to it.
All right, hello everybody.
Hello.
Hey, Marcus.
How are you all doing tonight?
Good.
Yeah, I'm doing okay. How are you doing?
Oh, not too bad. Just trying to kind of get everything in order here. We're trying to add some videos into the sync tubes. That way we can do some reacting. Oh god, where did it go? I think it was Mighty Mouse put something about Chomsky in... Yeah, there it is. Okay, I found it.
What's your hot take on Chomsky?
He always puts me to sleep.
Okay.
Well, this one is not like a lecture from Chomsky, so that much is good. It's
I remember that
explainer.
fucking video was like 7 hours or something. I remember watching it and like literally the whole house fell asleep.
Man,
Chomsky himself almost looks like he's falling asleep because he's quite old.
Dude, he is like the last 10 years has not been good to him. He looks a lot different now, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
He's still alive?
Still kicking.
Jesus.
That's like Richard Dawkins. Every time I see him, he looks like 20 years older, and it's only been a couple years. I'm just like, oh.
I was enjoying the Chomsky arc where he was battling all these like Bernie people that were like work for the campaign and stuff, but no longer like wanted to vote for Biden because what happened to Bernie. So he was going and just oh my gosh, just slaying them because he was making the argument that Trump is actually worse than Hitler. Chomsky was making that argument.
Well, I'm sure he really believes it, which doesn't make it misinformation, right?
I think he legitimately.
That's all it takes to just believe it.
His point was that, and it's articulate, I guess, because Trump's next term as the president would basically be the end of civilization, according to Chomsky. So if he's going to destroy the environment, he's going to destroy human civilization, while Hitler was only looking out for himself and killing a lot of people. But it's kind of interesting.
I mean, why delay the inevitable? Just elect him, let it happen. Fuck it. We've screwed it up. Our mission is failed,
baby.
Yeah, accelerationism. Yeah.
Get her done. Get her done.
Yep.
Yeah, giant meteor 2024. Is that the plan now?
I don't know. I hated Trump as much as the next person, but I don't know if I'd make that leap.
I wouldn't.
Maybe I'm an
I wouldn't say
optimist.
that.
I don't know.
I'm memeing, and also, yes, you're an optimist, way younger than I am. And
When she young makes me an optimist.
Oh, because the older you get, the less like you're like everything sucks. Fuck this, you know.
so many different sources to choose from. It almost feels like anything is a gateway drug at this point. Like it's not, this original, Fox News to, Newsmax to QAnon, anything. It's like, anything that is even remotely right-leaning can just loop you right into like the current conspiracy hive mind, considering how ubiquitous it seems to be. So maybe like, because I'm just curious, like, is there a pipeline that's the most commonly trafficked, or is it really just luck of the draw? Like, can you just stumble upon the wrong source and now suddenly, Hillary eating babies is what you're reading?
So I got a couple thoughts on that. So for me, as someone who needs to publish and publish a lot, that's actually a good thing, because I'm now working on the second QAnon paper, which is on how basically the crystal mommy shit became a pipeline into QAnon, and like the yoga and wellness to QAnon pipeline.
That's all over TikTok right now.
Oh my god! See, I'm not into TikTok.
I mean, it's not even.
Get on there.
I only watch it during my lunch break, but it's not even people just like. I haven't seen that pipeline specifically, but I've heard people say, like, be careful with the spirituality, witch, like, pagan stuff leading into white supremacy. And I just was like, what the fuck? Like, that was not a connection I ever saw being made, but...
Neither did I, because, I was a weird kid, so I, like, dabbled in all the weird shit. So it was weird... What do you mean?
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't know specifically the witch stuff, but the paper I'm working on now is about the yoga stuff. And what happened with yoga is, since the 1960s, there's been this creation of a wellness industrial complex, for lack of a better term. And I might even have the stats on my desktop, but it's like $1 billion industry now.
Yeah, we know a lot about my state.
So you're telling me that capitalism is to blame?
Always.
Pretty much, yeah.
Shocking. I'm shocked.
Yeah, I'm big surprise.
Utah's got a bunch of MLMs and oils and whatever the fuck, all that shit. All my friends from high school message me on Facebook about it.
But you don't want to be a boss babe?
I am a boss babe. It's a frame of mind, not a job.
Boss babe is when you own all the oils. The more oils you have, the more boss babe you are. And when you purchase every oil,
for girl boss.
Oh, sure. Aren't all those terms synonymous? I don't know. They all blur together.
Oh my gosh, it's girl boss. Gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss.
Okay, there we go.
Sorry.
But no, you're good. Like Professor Q, kind of going back to like all these different pipelines. Someone in chat mentioned too that like algorithms from big social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, and maybe even Twitter to some extent. Are those like sort of the originators? Are those the main like rivers that form all these different like offshoots and branches that are just tributaries to the QAnon lake? Like, is that kind of how the mapping of these things go? Does it start with social media?
So I owe a lot of I guess a debt of gratitude to a lot of investigative journalists, especially the QAnon Anonymous podcast people, the Conspirituality podcast people, and others. But journalists have been writing about this for like the last 5 years, about how the algorithms work. We don't really know exactly what they're doing, but we know that Facebook in particular found out really early on that rage and incitement was a huge driver for the algorithm to increase engagement, and also showing people what they already believe in. And so you can do a test. If you use Google Chrome, for example, create a new profile, go into YouTube, and follow one of these conspiracy people. And you would be shocked, like, all of the stuff that YouTube will then recommend to you. And that's kind of, when they talk about going down the rabbit hole, that's what they mean, is they start over here with something, and then that leads them over here to, adrenochrome and Democrats sacrificing
Well, they
babies.
just want you to click more, but like it ends up radicalizing because you just end up clicking on whatever catches your interest, but that leads to radicalization. So
Yeah, it's wild. It's and the bad thing is I don't even know, I can't even necessarily see a way out of this other than diversify the media that you consume. And so I keep a close eye on what Fox News is doing, but I also watch CNN and MSNBC as a way to combat this. And that's kind of the best guess that anybody has right now to, diversify your media diet, be critical of everything you consume. But I feel like there's got to be some other better way. I mean, obviously, regulation could help stem some of this, but I don't know. Dr. Boimler, do you have a thought on that, actually?
I do, because, I mean, you mentioned diversifying your media consumption, and you mentioned Fox News and CNN and MSNBC, and I thought, I hope that's not the extent of it.
Oh, no, NPR, I mean, whatever I can
No, I
get.
mean, what I'm talking about is I hope it's not just American media
Mhm.
that you're limiting yourself to. And certainly when it comes to anything institutional that depends on, the audience clicks and capitalism to run itself, you're going to get a particular worldview. It's going to be embedded in how they talk about it. Even if you're talking about, Democracy Now!, it still has an embedded Western viewpoint. And they may stand in contrast to a great extent to the others, but they're still all very, very American, and it's thereby limiting. So I found when a couple of years ago people started talking about the Uyghurs in West, which blow up that went on for weeks. Whether this was cultural genocide, not regular genocide, it just, everybody was outraged about it. And everybody took sides and they dug in deep. Now, this has nothing to do with whether or not there was a genocide going on. This has to do with the dynamics of the Twitch, sphere. But I realized that I could not find what I would consider to be reliable information about the Uyghurs and what was going on, because it was all filtered through various ideological prisms. And you can't get away from that. But if you talk, let's see, and I think the same is true right now going on with the Ukraine and Russia. I don't know if there's a way to get reliable, truthful understanding of what's going on without actually talking to the people that are there.
well,
And I realized
humans
this about myself, is that my understanding depends on understanding the lived experiences of people in the places that we're talking about. And I don't have access to that information. And I don't have a trusted source or a reliable source for no matter where it is, if it's in the Ukraine or in Xinjiang or, Eastern.
no matter where they are. So, I mean, no matter what information you consume from anywhere, you're going to get bias. Like, there's no way around it. And so I think what Professor Q said about diversifying your intake is great, because then you get all these different people's implicit biases, and then you're not stuck in an echo chamber, circle jerk, whatever of that.
Right. And so what I'm questioning is whether we're getting that information at all. If we're just relying upon these different sources rather than on the actual lived experience of the people there telling us their stories, and us putting those stories together to get some type of, idea of what's actually going on.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's possible by just listening to
you think about it too.
sources.
Like, if we're talking about that particular aspect of people's lived experiences, like, this reminds me of the current war reporting going on right now in Ukraine, where, reporters are literally on the ground, in some cases literally getting shot at by, Russian saboteurs. Like, that's about as real, immediate, and visceral as it gets. And I think, at least from my perspective, the reason why it's so shocking, surprising, and almost attention grabbing is because it's about as real and immediate as you can make it. It stands in contrast to a lot of what we normally get. This studio made, pre-recorded, pre-captured, inauthentic, series of talking heads telling you what they want you to actually hear. So I actually, when you brought that up, Dr. Bonabun, like, I really kind of resonated with that notion of lived experiences really driving what kind of idealized reporting we would want to see in the future, right? I think this makes sense if we want to talk about eventually limiting the influence of capitalism over these things. If we are trying to make people's material conditions sort of the driving force of what we need to do to fix things, then it would be nice if those material conditions were actually reported on through that prism of people's lived experiences.
See, I agree. Like the relative proximity of the reporting to the event is important, but at the same time, the people, like, the closer you get, the more, like, even with Ukraine and Russia reporting right now, there is misinformation from Ukraine, from Russia, and I think like, just because you're closer to something does not mean that you're a better source for emotional, like, how it impacts them, but like if you're just looking for straight facts, like, without biases, like, I don't think there's a best place to get that, because even when you go to the scene,
only interpretations of facts.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
and that makes
so
sense.
whose interpretation do you trust?
Yeah, exactly.
Trust plays a big factor in this, right?
And that's why social media has been so effective in radicalizing people, because the parasocial relationship, this person, I like this person, I'm like them, they've got cool hair, and also I actually blame a lot of prestigious universities too for this, because there's a lot of people with credentials out there that have used their credentials to engage in this kind of, and I hate to use this term, information warfare.
InfoWars, Alex Jones.
Well, I'm thinking of Brett Weinstein, Eric Weinstein,
The IDW types.
the IDW, but also Alex Jones. He has hack PhDs on there often. Can't remember some of the bigger names, but that's they've been very good at using a technique that has popped up in other things that I research, where you use expert opinion to validate basically a moral panic.
One expert opinion.
Yeah, so like, I my dissertation's on electronic dance music and the ecstasy panic, right? And one of the ways that the government mobilized people to ban ecstasy was through the use of expert opinion that this was bad, and there were doctors that would say things like, "Oh, ecstasy makes holes in your brain," and That's not that's like kind of true, but not really. And
Every drug makes holes in your brain. I mean, if you listen to the older folks, smoking pot puts holes in your brain. Is the same? Yes, it is. Yeah.
Putting holes in your brain was the older version of "it just turns you gay," which is like the current meta in terms of what substances will do to you.
Is that coming back?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it kind of like lurked beneath the floorboards, but now that like the Alex Jones types brought it up, Obama's putting chemical in the water that are turning the frogs gay. Like that,
Wasn't
I
it
think
fluoride?
kind of re-mainstreamed it. It was atrazine. It was about some sort of
I thought it was fluoride.
Insecticide or something that happened to like disrupt the endocrine systems of frogs. Like the frog issue was a real issue, but he turned that into like Obama's trying to poison your water supply and you're going to be
but that's
gay
the
if you
thing.
don't do something.
They use facts
It's
and then they make it a little bulbous so that it doesn't quite fit in with reality, but it's easier to swallow because there are facts behind it, and then they just
There's a nugget in there. There's a
go
little
off.
nugget. in
Yeah,
there.
exactly. Maybe that's what the guy meant by saying Alex Jones is right about a lot of things, but I don't want to give him the credit.
Yeah, I would
So
enjoy
what's
that.
interesting is there's actually a kind of sociology behind some of this stuff. So like one of the best books that people ought to read that goes into the kernel of truth that all conspiracy theories kind of delve into is it's called the title of the book's The Power Elite by C. Wright Mills. And Mills was kind of a prolific sociologist, and his book The Power Elite is on basically about this idea about how there is a ruling class in America that shapes popular opinion, and the media is an arm of this, and it's a very interesting text. But the issue is the conspiracy theorists take that idea and they make a hard right with it, like basically drunken sailors.
How
Inflated a little bit.
like would we have conspiracies without media? Like before there was like printing presses and stuff like that, or is it just like weird word of mouth stories that these things were, and now because of the printing press and the internet, now they're able to spread easily?
I mean, they had conspiracies in ancient Egypt,
There you go.
like who Cleopatra was sleeping with and shit like that. Like there were
Right.
Oh yeah, that's right.
just because it isn't. I mean, just because it isn't printed or put onto news or anything, it still spreads like crazy, just not as crazy fast as it does now. But
that makes sense. That's crazy.
We learn a lot through gossip, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just because we have a lot of fancy toys and all of these technical gadgets doesn't mean we're still not basic primates
True.
who learn through gossip, and we learn what's going on around us through gossip. What the person down the street is doing and what the person over in that other desk is doing, and
We've always been like this.
I'm the
exactly
biggest
how
gossip, by
we
the way.
communicate. So we're not immune to any of this stuff. We are this stuff. We reproduce it all the
Right.
time.
And it doesn't get worse with technology. It just maybe gets around faster, but it's the same shit, just different medium.
Right. And now
I feel like
you have
that's
the
not
possibility of much more people joining in on it.
exactly. I think
And
that's the scale.
concentrating it.
The scale is bigger now in conspiracies, right? Because now we have worldwide instantaneous human communication. Now we're able to have worldwide conspiracies that I don't think before.
Not just regional or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now we have
I-
NWO. Now we have every single science lab
Mm-hmm.
all working together to fake PCR or to fake a moon landing and stuff like that. Where we're talking about, it would have to be, if you think of the scale, about 100 million people, like for real, like in order to be at that level. It's insane.
I got it. So I'm going to riff off Nietzsche here for a minute. God is
Go off,
dead.
King.
God is dead, and we've replaced him with the New World Order.
Yeah.
Inexplicable thing. New World Order.
It is. I mean, it really is very like supernatural. Where it is this crazy thing that they created in their minds that's huge. I mean, if you really go into it, what they're feeling is like it's real and it's huge.
So let
there's
me ask
scary.
you guys, what makes mystery fun for you guys?
Mystery?
Oh, for me, I'll tell you, I know exactly what it is. It's I know what you're getting at. I see you. It's there is something intellectually stimulating solving a puzzle, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's what a lot of these conspiracy theories do. In fact, there's been a lot of people write about how QAnon used LARP, live action role playing techniques that made it fun to participate in. And so if you're a soccer mom, then it was like, the best thing ever, because now suddenly your life is, enchanted with this curiosity that wasn't there before.
Yep.
I totally
And in a
agree.
world where science has discovered everything, I think it adds some sort of like, I don't know, mystery, for lack of a better word, to the world. And if stuff doesn't go your way, you can just be like, that. Or like you can make a puzzle out of some random shit and go down that rabbit hole for hours and hours and entertain yourself with it. Like,
I remember like when I was religious, like there was, these questions that I would have, and I would try to think about them, and it would be like, why is a bee shaped or colored this way? And it's like, oh, God did that. And it kind of reminds me a lot of like QAnon, where it's just like, it's a simple answer. It's just like, oh, the NWO is doing it. It's like, of course, unbelievable. Like they're staging this whole Russia-Ukraine crisis, by the way, apparently, because that's what all this vaccine stuff is coming, and it's the same time that this is happening, and so it all wraps up again.
I've told my husband that multiple times. Like, conspiracy theories to me are just another religion, and I just don't. My brain does not work that way. I just don't understand it, and so that's why I just haven't gotten into it, because it's just not my thing.
And it's merging with religion. So, like, Greg Locke is a huge QAnon conspiracy theorist, and also an evangelical pastor in Tennessee, I think. And I think a lot of people in kind of that kind of Baptist evangelical tradition are QAnon supporters.
For sure. I mean,
because like if you can get people to believe that like there's a God and he exists and everything is explained through that lens of religion, then you can believe a lot of stuff.
It's so true. I feel like it's like a structure, like a pyramid of power that people put into their brains, and then people can usurp that same structure and take the head of it, right? Be the head of that pyramid, and now it's their it's so.
He was the Pope.
I mean, did you see the thing
literally,
where the Pope
like,
went like he went like this
of whatever,
and the QAnon people said, "See, he's using the devil horns."
Mm-hmm.
That's "I love you" in sign language.
I know, right? I know.
Well, they get like crazier than that. It's like 3 fingers, 3, the C in the alphabet. C means that this is happening.
Oh, you're talking about
the cryptography stuff. Yeah, dude, that shit's nuts.
That's what's so they're so in these Q drops and stuff. That's what it's all about. They like huddle around, like
jump the gap and jump the gap.
Yeah, trying to figure it out, trying to decipher like who can get it.
So I'm probably going to hell for this.
See you there.
Welcome.
Blaspheme away.
I have an undergrad who wanted to do some research with me, and so he's been coding like the Q drops, and we're doing some really cool stuff with that. And one of the questions we raise in the paper is, how do we really know what is real here? Right? So, like, I'm kind of flipping this in a kind of different direction, but like, there's a lot of sociology and a lot of digital sociology that's built on what we call content analysis, which is where you go out and the Q drops are our data set, right? Mm-hmm. They're online, they're digital. we assume that the people making comments under there are actually real people. How do we know that they're not bots?
Exactly.
How do we know? And one of the problems that we had early on was, how do we differentiate people who are true believers from people who are being sarcastic or people who are
joking
LARPing?
around? Exactly. Jokingly racist, jokingly talking about the Jewish question or whatever.
Yeah, because I remember interestingly enough, this goes back to an old 4chan meme where it was meta commentary on the website. I think in particular, the board B, or it's just the random board.
Yes,
but it was
B.
literally about how, originally sort of in the earlier days of the website, which I will admit I did use 4chan a decent amount when I was in high school, so a while ago, probably 10 years ago. But
another big reveal.
I know. Although I've said that before, maybe not to you guys, but I've said this to my chat before.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, well, I haven't heard it. This is the first time I'm
revealed to you.
Drop. Q drop, Marcus drop.
I feel like I know you so much better now.
Yeah, it explains a couple of things, I'm sure. Sometimes old habits die hard. That's still, I think, why I'm such an incessant shit poster. But, going back to this meme that I remember, it was literally about how people on B were just kind of, like Professor Hugh was saying, just joking around, like Greg was saying, haha, we're being racist for fun. Haha, oh, look, isn't being a Nazi funny as a joke? But then the people who actually believe these things can't tell it's a joke, and they're like, yes, finally, friends, people who agree with me. I can't wait to talk to them and invite my friends here because it's a safe space. And then suddenly the entire place is overrun with the people who legitimately believe this. And all the people who are joking are like, wait, shit.
Exactly.
We just turned this into like a Nazi hangout. Maybe we shouldn't have done this.
So my husband, hold on. My husband works or did or something with a woman who is firmly in the grasps of QAnon, and she showed him this that I'm going to post and react to this. Oh gosh.
Yeah, Frackel, that's so right. Ironic joking is often a way to test social acceptance of a bad ideation. I totally agree with that. That's a great way to put it, man. I totally
fuck, it's the Kabbalah shit. Yeah.
Oh my god, Amber, what the hell is this?
My husband's coworker shared it with him.
What?
Apparently she took the nosedive off the deep end, according to him.
No,
just a nosedive?
Not that bad.
That's not that bad?
Well, let me look at it. Let me make sure I'm not
There's another. There's another. There's another one too.
Oh hell! This is shit.
Oh, it's too
I didn't
big.
look closely at this.
Oh yeah.
It's fucking nuts, dude.
Well, I linked this too, like it's like a mind map. So people that can't see, it's like a mind map thing where everything is all linked. Everything is linked together. The conspiracies.
Oh no!
I mean, really. I mean, like that is
oh my god.
That is someone that's trying so hard to try to figure out how these things all connect together.
Why the world is the way it is.
But I
feel bad.
I can kind of I feel for them though. It's just like but just because you can put dots on a board and draw a line through it doesn't mean that all of those things are there. Correlation does not mean causation. So it's like
there's something you guys are missing.
Okay.
So this is the Jewish tree of life, right? That comes from the Kabbalah, and but they've written over it and made it into this like kind of New World Order stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of anti-Semitism that I'm seeing in this that I didn't see when I just glanced at it. Like
he's giving me another one, by the way, so stay tuned.
I can link the one that I get from the anti-vax group that I have. I mean that I'm in. It's this
woman really wanted to get him on her side.
Thank you for this. You've given me a new treasure trove.
I know. I'm like, I need to give this to him because this is a shit.
Yeah, there's a website on there even.
Ooh. Wait,
we don't want somebody walking away from the stream though saying, "Man, we got this info here."
It's true.
No.
Yeah, we do not endorse this by any
No.
stretch. We are analyzing why it is the way it is, and not because we like it.
I think it's one of those things where, like, people think, for example, this is a good example. This is a really, like, a lot of times the anti-vaccine groups are trying to do this in order to look at where someone's science research, where they actually want to go with it. What's the motive of their scientific research, right? So there's like these guys that have done work with the army because the army puts a lot of money into microbiology research for a whole host of reasons. And then they'll go and they'll be related to another lab, and then they'll do work here, and now it's like, oh, now you're 3 steps beyond the army, but like you're still an army agent. You're still like working with them and trying to put these things together, and it's like someone just could have just worked there though, and just like they got a job.
Pop open that PDF.
It's rough.
If you want to see brain rot in action.
Uh-oh.
Oh, it's bad.
Oh my god.
It's even worse. Yeah.
Yes, give it to me.
Oh no.
Working.
It's not opening for me. Hang on.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome.
Oh yeah, the Q map. Yeah, I know exactly what this is. Yeah,
That's even more frightening that you know exactly what this is.
I know.
Yeah, I've seen this before.
Do you realize how many childhood memories I've sacrificed in the name of science?
All those neurons are now being taken up by Q.
I can't even, like, every time I hear the number 17, I think, oh, Q.
Q.
Wait, 17.
Yeah, so Q is the 17th letter in the alphabet, and so a lot of QAnon promoters will say, you know that guy, number 17, or something like that.
I watched one documentary about it.
Right.
That's all I've got.
By the way, the HBO documentary is absolutely
I think that's
fantastic.
the one I watched, actually.
Yeah.
So
But
in this one, they have Donald Trump linked to John G. Trump, the FBI raided Tesla, and then Nikola Tesla. So within like one
what?
One action.
so some of this is
Already
true.
wrong.
It's Trump. It's
Some
like,
of this is true.
of course, it's some of it's going to be
Nikola
true, but
Tesla.
So
Elon Musk?
Okay, here's the kernel of truth. All right.
John G. Trump.
So Trump's uncle, and I think I got that right, but one of Trump's relatives got access to Nikola Tesla's research notes. So, the QAnon folks have spun it to this other thing, which is that Donald Trump has access to secret technology like med beds, time travel. There is a branch of QAnon that says that Trump is actually Baron Trump from the future
Yeah.
and has time traveled back to basically, like, set things right. And they also
to become
cite
his own father.
Yeah, right.
Gross, dude.
How do you
It is so gross.
Yep.
see? Okay, like the intro level shit makes sense to me, and then the extreme stuff, I just can't understand how someone can go from being like a cognitive, thinking, breathing human being
Yeah.
to ask Q what's under the Denver airport.
I think the crazy
that one I
the
remember.
Denver airport.
the
That's a big part of the conspiracy theory. The Denver airport has a horse intentionally made to look a little demonic because people were like starting to spin this conspiracy shit around the Denver airport that it's used. It's okay. So part
oh
of
my gosh, it
QAnon,
does look weird.
Yeah, it's a
part of
giant blue
QAnon
Bronco
says
with
that
red
Democrats are trafficking children, right?
Yeah.
And so how do they traffic children? Through underground tunnels.
The Denver
And so-
airport.
The Denver airport, right? And it's got all the symbols, and
Oh my god.
it's out there in the open.
Yeah, and it has the underground trams to transport you between terminals. I mean, I grew up in Colorado. Like, I know exactly what murals you're talking about. Like, I've walked
Oh,
past
no.
them. I've seen them before. I'm not in on it, of course, but
I think the designers kind of leaned into it, thinking, "Oh, this will be a great marketing ploy," and but yeah, people have really kind of spun that into some weird elements.
Amber, I think like your point was so true though. Like talking about people that just go from normal and then they believe this stuff, and then it's just like a slippery slope. And it's so interesting to me the people that find ground and say no. Like I'll believe I'm skeptical of the vaccine. Like I like this anti-vaccine guy I know. You know, I talked to him and I'm like, well, what do you think else like science has gotten wrong? Do you like believe in a flat Earth? And he's like, no, you think I'm a fucking idiot? Like I'm like, well,
That's his line in the sand.
exactly. So it's so interesting to me. Like, how could he believe?
That
He believes
goes
in a new
away
world
over
order,
time.
a new world
Yeah.
order that can do all of this stuff with the with the vaccine and all that kind of stuff, but not like the geologists or the people that are studying, the astronomers. Like they're not in on it. It's really interesting. I asked him this, and he said that the flat Earth is something that he can test himself. So he could like go out to the edge of the Earth and find out for himself if that was real.
See,
And that's why he thinks that's why the Earth is round.
I think the biggest problem with like conspiracy theories and like anti-vax and all the COVID misinformation and shit is like lack of trust in the institutions that are built to do this.
Very true.
And I understand it, but I just don't know how it goes so wrong.
So this is what fascinates me about QAnon. There's a couple things. One is this idea that it's a big tent conspiracy theory, which is what the QMAP is doing. It's basically taking all of the big conspiracy theories and showing you, hey, this is how they're all connected. The other thing that interests me about QAnon is it is literally a exemplar of the postmodern condition, right? This shift in, the decline of the grand narrative, this idea that we live in a simulated reality that is, created through mediated images, and that this notion of reality no longer exists at all. Like, and that just like, I remember when I first heard about postmodernism, it blew my brain, and then I saw this stuff, and I was like, this is exactly what they were talking about. This is exactly what Baudrillard meant. This, so yeah, it's fascinating to me. But again, I don't offer or have any real way to figure out how to get out of this.
I have a question from my husband. He's really into like reading about all this stuff. I can't do it. It hurts me on an emotional level, but he's really into like kind of like
emotional damage.
Hobbyistly what
Yeah.
I love that.
I'm the same way. I'm totally with them. I know exactly what you mean.
Emotional damage. Okay. So, oh, my webcam.
The Clinton body count question.
Yes.
Yeah. So, for those of you who don't know,
I
there
read a
were
little bit about this when he mentioned it, and I was just like, no. I researched a couple of them and like proved them wrong enough for myself, and then just dropped it because I didn't want to go through 50 people and prove their deaths. Anyway.
Yeah. So, like that, you basically hit it on the head. There's this belief that the Clintons basically had anybody who opposed them killed. So I think James Comey was the big one that they had killed. I think Jeffrey Epstein, they alleged they had killed. Yeah, anybody who basically had dirt who could bring down the cabal, they had killed. And the Hillary thing's kind of interesting because that's kind of what a lot of the Q-nuts, or I'm sorry, I shouldn't say nuts. Like that's actually pretty bad. But a lot of the adherents to QAnon kind of said was that that like Hillary was basically the devil incarnate. So there's a lot of sexism that's involved with this. There's a lot of racism that's involved with this, xenophobia that's involved with this, and that's kind of where that all stems from. And that's why it lends itself well to this white nationalism stuff that has figured out how to combine with it and, you know, weaponize it in a really effective way.
So let me ask you another question, because I think somebody earlier in chat sort of alluded to this, and I've heard the term thrown around before, but can you maybe define the term crank magnetism and how it kind of integrates into all of this? Like, has that
Crank magnetism?
Yeah, at least my understanding, it's a term where, like, if you believe in one conspiracy, you're more likely to believe in all of them.
Oh, wow. Okay, I didn't realize there was a term for that.
No, okay.
Yeah, that's what I was talking
today
about earlier.
Yeah, so I haven't really uncovered anything in that regard in looking at stuff. But definitely it makes sense to me. Like I said, if you can believe that, you know, there's an all-powerful God that watches you 24/7 and, you know, knows when you've been bad or good, you know, it's easier to believe all kinds of other things like that, you know, and again, especially the Baptists and the evangelicals believe Satan is actually a real entity that interferes with the goings on of humans.
Yep.
So I could kind of see how somebody would go, yeah, they're drinking the blood of children to, you know, maintain vitality.
I mean, apparently Obama and Hillary smell like sulfur, which is like a key trait of the
that means they're
Antichrist.
demons.
See,
we call them demons for other reasons, but
see, that's just their
extremes get me.
racism.
Yeah,
That's just their
but like
racism and their sexism. Like,
yeah.
the extremism, just like you can go from, okay, like maybe the Clintons killed people that were against them. Like I can see. I mean, it's ridiculous, but like
Yeah,
I can
yeah.
see that.
Okay, yeah. That's
Like,
the first
Spygate is
step.
logic
what that's
jump?
called, by the
That's
way.
the first step. I'm with you.
But like the like really
Antichrist.
extreme stuff. Yeah, Antichrist shit. That's where I'm like, the fuck? Where did that?
Yeah.
So this is another thing that I'm writing about right now. That there's actually a Q drop I know better than any of the others, and it's the drop says there is Q and there are Anons, but there is no QAnon. And so I'm bringing this up because a lot of the people within QAnon have talked openly about how the movement is a media created phenomenon. That it was not a subculture, it wasn't a social movement, it wasn't any of these other things, but the media created this narrative. And there is some truth to that. And so in this paper I'm working on, that's one of the things that we talk about is we probably shouldn't necessarily treat this as a monolithic thing, that there's many degrees of QAnon and what people believe, just like in, you know, there's, you know, within like mainstream religions, we call it religiosity. So how strongly you believe that the Bible is the literal word of God, etc. Or do you just go to church on Easter, right? And the same thing is true with QAnon is there's all these different variants where there's people who believe everything and there's people who believe that basically Democrats are pedophiles. Like there's, you know, different shades. But definitely I think people do start out at the more reasonable side of things. And QAnon has used it as a recruitment tool. So in California, for example, there's all these Save the Children rallies.
Oh, that's the big thing now.
Yeah, and that's a recruitment tool. So a lot of those people believe that are you know into QAnon, into this kind of new religious movement, for lack of a better term. and they kind of slowly drift into it over time.
I wanted to bring up talking to these people, like people that are getting into QAnon or are fully into QAnon. I know that the documentary we watched said that if you know someone who's getting into it or is on the edge, like to not obviously not condescend them and like be understanding and empathetic and like, yeah, I understand why you would think that, but like here are like it's hard because you show them evidence or what you deem
It's
evidence.
never enough.
Exactly. So but I know that if you come at them attacking them and like condescending them, of course they're just going to get pushed further into their radicalism. So I don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so you're touching on the like, how do we solve this issue? Which sociologists are great at showing you, hey, this is a problem over here.
Yeah.
Somebody else needs to solve it because I'm just an academic. Yeah, so I got a lot of thoughts on this because I got into researching this because someone in my family called me at like 3 a.m. one night and told me that the Vatican had been taken and I needed to go buy rations and take all my money out of the bank because Trump was taking over and there was going to be 10 days of darkness where there was not going to be any power, no internet, while like he basically destroys the cabal. And that's when I realized, holy shit,
That's the storm, dude.
we got a problem. And I started researching it.
It's like Y2K all over again.
Yeah, they call it the storm, the thing that's gonna like.
Well, no. This is actually a separate thing. This is
Okay.
called the 10
Revelation.
Days of Darkness.
Is it Revelations?
Gotcha.
Is that it?
But well, yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys
It's
are picking up
Revelations.
on the themes here. It's just kind of Christian theology repackaged in a new kind of way. But yeah, you shouldn't condescend them, but at the same time, so the new Channel 5 film came out. It's an hour long, and he actually went to somewhere very close to where I grew up in
Someone
Indiana.
posted that in my Discord today, right before this panel.
It's pretty
and I'm like,
good.
I need to watch that.
It's pretty good. It's pretty cringe though, but I watched it and then he was interviewing people from my hometown area and I was like, holy shit. Because I could see for the first time how much I had changed from where the people I had grown up around. And I don't really know that they're like, I don't know that I could talk to somebody from my past and reach them. I don't know that that's even a possibility. So and definitely there are people in my family who are probably not going to be seeing me for a while because they're a little bit too out there on the belief system.
Yeah, I messaged a family member for the first time in 13 years a couple weeks ago. And did I bring this up last week?
I don't think so.
No? Okay, so I
wasn't
messaged.
here. I didn't hear the story.
Yeah. So I messaged him for the first time in 13 years and I'm like, "Hey, how you doing? Like what's going on? I'm sorry. Like what's like hi. It's been a while. Let's catch up." And he's just talking about his family and then he's like, "Oh, I'm running for school board." And I'm like, "Oh, nice." I
Oh
don't
no.
Uh-huh. And I was like, "That's cool that you're trying to like make a difference for the better." And he's like, "Yeah, what they're teaching in the schools these days is ridiculous." And I'm like, "Oh, fuck me."
Here we
And
go.
I'm like, "Yeah,
Trump
so
CRT.
I just graduated and I'm hoping to go to graduate school and like I'm trying to change the subject but like still stick to the topic." And he goes, "My son learned that the Declaration of Independence is sexist and racist." And I'm like, "Okay, one, I think you're talking about the Constitution. Two,
Oh my god.
that's my DNA. Like, we grew up roughly together for the first like 10 years, 13 years of my life, and I just messaged him after 13 years, and he's all the way off the rocker. So
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to kind of what you said earlier, Amber. Like, how do people who otherwise had, relatively sane upbringings who to have at least the capability for behaving normally and thinking not like this become like this? And I think that also goes back to
he
what
became a cop. I think that was the start.
Oh, does he have cop skull?
Yeah.
Does he look like a thumb?
Yes.
All right, cop skull phrenology confirmed. The only valid phrenology. Anyways,
I didn't want to say
only-
it, but it was important.
The only effective strategy I see, and this is true in a lot of different things that have been written about cults and religions and stuff, is you have to present them with some kind of irrefutable evidence or show how their belief system has some kind of shortcoming that they can't explain. And that's pretty hard because Greg mentioned Flat Earth earlier. There's a whole documentary on how they tried to do experiments to prove that the Earth was flat, and even in confronted with that evidence, they still were like, no, the Earth is still flat. We just got to figure out how to make the experiment work.
Because that's how science works.
Yeah.
You set out to prove your belief.
I read something sort of on that like line of thinking. I think this is in relation to vaccines in particular, but it was sort of this notion of this like self-insulating, self-confirming like thought process that like once they've taken hold on one of these conspiracies, whether it's vaccines or flat earth or Q or anything like that, there's never, I mean, this goes back to why you can't just throw evidence at some of these people, because it's just never enough. Like they'll create thought patterns where they're always just trying to come up with something else to confirm whatever holes that other people point out to them. If oh, why is it impossible that Hillary's running a sex trafficking dungeon underneath this pizza parlor? They'll come up with another conspiracy to fill that void, or they'll come up with something else that's equally as like off the beaten path. So it almost just feels like once this really takes hold, like it feels like brainworms. Like how do you like undo that? Like where do you even start in these conversations?
I don't think you undo it. I think you change the story, right? People construct all of these semantic associations and connections with these mysteries and convolutions, and they do it in the form of a story. And so you start telling different stories that don't, rely on that paradigm necessarily. It may connect, may overlap, may allude to, and you get them to start making different associations. And you just tell a different story. And then that will lead them to places where they're stuck with their old beliefs and they can't quite resolve what's going on. So they have to, come to a crisis and
like the
Make a
reverse of
decision
how,
about it.
like the reverse of how they got into it.
Yeah.
Like slowly inch them back up to reality.
Yeah, I was reading on like
leave them out with a different story.
Assuming they're open to it in the first place, but
yeah, it's like I was
Like,
reading
well-
some deculting stuff, and they talked about how it has to be like that info has to be coming from someone that they respect. So having like a stranger isn't going to tell you anything, but that's why in cults one of the first things that happens is the removal of the family, because then someone can't just come up to you and be like, John, like, man, you all right, dude? Like, everything's gotten a little weird lately.
You replace the trust relationships.
Exactly.
You replace their trusted relationships with the cult members.
Exactly.
And so you have to kind of do the opposite to bring them out. And having the respect for somebody, maybe in a position of authority, a lot of other semantic associations with that, it serves as a way to inch them out of it. But you can't, there's no magic bullet. they're going to keep gossiping, and we're going to keep gossiping, and we're all going to keep telling stories, and it's just going to take time, you know. And I say this knowing that when I was a little kid, I mean, literally in the mid 70s, when I was a little kid, hearing stories from my aunt about revelations and how the devils were going to be roaming and dead people everywhere, and it's just going to be chaos and blah, blah, blah. And when my mom heard, she was really pissed about it. But I didn't believe the stories, but they frightened my sister. So, you know, we never went over to Aunt Lizzie's house anymore. And
Good on her.
But the thing is that she still believes that. She's 89 years old. And I'm not going to change her beliefs. She's not out there spreading them to little children anymore, but still,
Oh, Jesus.
you know, she's going to rest with her beliefs, and she's going to be strong in her beliefs. And she's, you know, she's a Catholic that goes to school, goes to church every single day,
Wow.
and just
Every
very
fucking day?
orthodox, you know,
Jesus.
believes in some, you know, literally believes that women cannot be priests because their hands are not consecrated like a man's hands are. You know, this is
Dirty
the type of-
hands.
yeah, something like that. And so, I mean, she has a lot of quirky beliefs tied to her religion that at 89 years old, she's not giving up. So it's like, you know, just sit with your aunt and amuse her in her old age.
She's not influencing
But-
that much, but the thing is, and I'll
Yeah,
give it
she's-
to these
she's-
guys and girls and people that they are, man, they have this thing that's happening to them, but they're fighting back. I'll give that to them. They are like what Amber, like what you're saying, they're filling like school board spots. They're actually trying to do something about it,
Mhm.
you know? And I guess like using that energy to make things better, maybe we can just work on identifying actual problems that we can all agree with, or taking them out of these spots, taking them out of these positions and going for those spots ourselves.
I linked a video in one of the places, maybe Good Content or something. I shared it with you, Marcus. It was the Gramsci video.
I watched it.
And the cultural hegemony and how cultures actually work. That, you know, it's not the typical conception of like what a culture is. It's a group of people who share the same
Was that
kind
the
of ideology and
philosophy
interests.
Now video?
Philosophize this.
Philosophize this.
That
Yeah.
one. Okay, I watched that
Yep.
one. Okay.
And so, you know, when you have different cultural groups with their different stories, their different beliefs, they're all competing politically for, you know, different types of power. And the same is happening with the people going to the school boards and trying to run for school. You know, they're part of a culture that is trying to expand and play politics with their beliefs, which is something that we're all expected to do, right?
Yeah, but
Don't you think that's something kind of American about that? Like this need to proselytize your culture, your belief system in order. Because I feel like that's kind of an American thing.
interesting?
I think there's a really strong strain of it in American culture. Yeah, that this
Like the
this need
imperialism?
for domination.
But I don't think it's necessarily American. But I would say it's very vicious in America.
Yeah, I think it's very strong. It's universal in some ways, but you know, other people have, you know, other cultures have different ways of kind of attenuating that. We don't have those mechanisms in American culture, so they get amplified. And
So what I always, when I'm looking at this stuff, I always think about Weber and his, you know, Protestant ethic and spirit of capitalism. That the prosperity doctrine, the idea that, you know, you got to go out and save souls, and you know, if you save souls, you'll be rewarded, and it kind of becomes this self-reinforcing process.
oh yeah,
You know, I see so much of that in this stuff.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Yeah, and religion has been with us forever, basically, as long as we've been human, basically. And established ourselves in cultures. So it's a long-standing pattern that we're not going to get out of anytime soon. So we should really learn to deal with it in ways that are constructive. And so I suggest telling different stories.
I'm trying to think of what that would look like.
I don't know. I think it has to be, contextual. I mean, every person is going to have a different interaction with every other person.
Yeah.
And so it has to kind of emerge from that interaction organically between the two people, or however many people.
Yeah, I'm trying something new
Yes.
with my QAnon friends, or sorry, not my QAnon friends, the anti-vax people. I'm like, I want to talk to you about cool things that are happening, just like in science, the coolest stuff. Maybe get out of like just the science and the vaccine talk, and you like realize that there's a lot of people that are doing a lot of awesome stuff in science. So then maybe like, lipids coating an RNA molecule actually isn't that crazy anymore. It's kind of actually really simple. Something we've kind of been doing for decades now. It's kind of really old. So
Yeah, so I mean that actually brings up an interesting point, Greg, and I think this relates to the video that you linked, Winnebun, sort of in relation to this idea that we have these competing cultures and we have people from these cultures. I hate this term, but it's always so relevant. Duking it out in the free marketplace of ideas. In relation to the sort of capitalistic economic organization. One set of people from a culture, or their most elevated intellectuals are sort of favored in the narrative, and they become the hegemon. So, to me, it almost feels like in that effort to tell different stories, like we almost need to do a little bit of what like the right is doing, right? We need to elevate our own to try and get these different stories and reframings of popular narratives more out and about, right? Like, imagine if when people like Brett Weinstein are going off on their podcast from the inside of a humidor, you had sort of this natural counter that the NIH puts up somebody and has a podcast where a bunch of like vaccine hesitant people get to just sit there and talk with a scientist, or one of the people who helped invent the vaccines, something like that, to really like put these people front and center in culture rather than in a laboratory and just letting them work away. It seems like we need to put our thinkers into the culture more often.
The problem with that, like, that's a great idea, but the problem is that the right does not have the same standards for having someone be a hegemon. Like,
yeah, I mean, that's true.
They can have anyone on the pedestal, like Alex Jones, who doesn't know anything about the mRNA vaccines, but he can talk about it for hours because he is there because he, spouts his shit. But like, we don't have anyone. And we don't want anyone like that. We want someone who knows what they're talking about. And that comes with the price that we don't usually have someone that popular or that like clickbaity, because we don't like go outside of reality to get clicks. And that kind of, I mean, it's a great thing, but it also
I would argue against that, actually.
Ooh.
That there's this tendency in science that's creeping up that I don't like at all, that people are starting to look for clicks. Because, so take my institution, for example. There's this tool, what is it called? Academic Metrics, I think is the name of it. And what it does is it quantifies your research output and your citations and all of the stuff, but it doesn't differentiate between somebody citing you and saying you're a scumbag, or a journalistic outlet, which I figured out how to raise my metrics in my research, and so I think, unfortunately, there may be a pivot to this kind of like clickbaity kind of model. We're not quite there yet, but I think it's definitely kind of getting there.
I mean, that goes back to capitalism, right? You know, profit motive, publish or perish. Like, if there's a big institutional drive within science to try and clickbait, get attention, draw, venture capital to start throwing money at research, that's only going to reinforce that as a successful strategy, and you'll only see more of it. And of course, the press releases coming from the science press are always just entirely deranged and detached from the actual work. But all of that to say, like, yeah, I've seen that exact same trend, especially because the people my institution have put in their press release department are almost like Q adjacent in terms of just how like deranged they act and how they talk about what they do as far as their work. So yeah, I see what you're saying, Amber. Like, the political right is always willing to play dirty, and they don't have the same set of standards that we do. Like, we want to try and elevate, correct things, people who are acting in good faith, correct information. That goes back to Brandolini's law, right? We're always a step behind because we're trying to talk about the bullshit the right has done and why that's wrong, and then talk about the right stuff and help people understand the right stuff. And it's just a lot of extra work that takes a long time to do.
That they don't have to do.
Yeah, they don't have to do. Exactly, because they don't want to. It's not what they're about.
Yeah. But don't give them the power.
Yeah.
Just don't give them the power to decide on what you need to deal with.
How?
Just like make progress on what we want, and and think locally as opposed to nationally, and try to make progress on things in your community. And that's like a good way of just refocusing energy, because it's easy to feel downtrodden when you're looking at things nationally or globally. It's really easy to be.
But I don't necessarily feel downtrodden. I'm just making an observation. Like, since Marcus brought up the point that we need like a hegemon to get our shit out there, I was just saying, like, it's easier for the right and alt-right to get a hegemon to do that because they don't have the same checks and balances that we do, because we follow the science and they just kind of...
Yeah,
All right, fine. Twist my arm. I'll do it. You can put me on that pedestal.
That's why Marcus and I are out here, dude. And Greg. That's why we're out here.
I mean, that's why we're all out here, right?
Well, yeah, that too.
I mean, like, we all, I think, have kind of arrived at that position, but I really like that video that Buenabuen linked because it really helped, I think, kind of better frame the reason why this like panel kind of exists on Twitch in the first place. That need to put intellectuals and organic intellectuals, as that video called them, really again into the culture to make them be people in their communities, right? To help build things again from the ground up in a way that isn't so dominated by corporate sponsored intellectuals who are pushing oil industry friendly research and whatnot. Like, it just feels like everything in at least science is just so manufactured, inorganic, and that's what we got to work on.
Yeah, one of the things that I would say is that I think Amber's exactly right, that if you're going to try to compete on the same playing field with the tactics of the right, you're going to be playing dirty. You're going to not really have any standards or principles or anything like that. And I think that one of the things that American culture in particular, but I think this is more or less species-wide because it can be demonstrated to be true in other species, is this kind of innate valuing, or this cultural valuing of fairness and equity, right? And if you attack things from a fairness and equity point of view, and expose the people who are acting unfairly, they get shunned. People move away from them. If you can demonstrate very clearly that you're acting fairly and they're acting unfairly, they'll, everybody will tend to reject the person who's acting unfairly, the cheater, right? Mm-hmm. And I think trying to craft things around some type of fairness and equity value would be beneficial. And I also think that the other thing that Americans do is they really love something practical that gets results, right?
Mhm.
They're very utilitarian in that sense. They've adopted these utilitarian values. And if you have a doctor who can demonstrate that they've done X amount of things to impact the lives for the better on X many people, they have a better shot at convincing the people that they're talking to than somebody like Alex Jones, who's just telling a story. Now, he may be very persuasive, and there's a lot of background stuff that comes along with all of that. But ultimately, in a fair contest, the person who acts with integrity and has based that on his practical experience and demonstrated benefit or utilitarian benefit to other people, I think people tend to, gravitate towards those type of people. Now, that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it, and I like to just kind of throw this in there, is that I think we should start teaching high school kids, and even earlier, philosophy and logic in high school. And I don't think we do that.
I just want to say, like, from a theoretical standpoint or like a hypothetical standpoint, I totally agree with you in like, oh my god, I just had a brain fart. I totally agree with you, but fuck. When you're talking, your brain just
doesn't work.
Yeah, okay. Yes, exactly. Because the algorithms and the clickbait and all that, like, we don't have, I mean, we kind of do, but like, we can't go as far as they do without stretching the truth. And we don't do that because we're trying to play fair with people who aren't. So like, I agree from a hypothetical standpoint that would work, but like in reality, we don't have the platform that they do because we don't have the people reading the titles of videos and stuff about science discoveries and whatever and being like, oh, that sounds, wow, I wonder what the fuck he's talking about this time, like they do with Alex Jones or whoever, or Tucker Carlson or whoever. Like, we don't have that platform.
I think you're right. And when I was talking about, telling those stories ourselves, I'm more or less talking about, person to person, not necessarily through media and stuff like that. Adding the media piece into it makes it, complex on a very much larger scale. And, the algorithms themselves are just coding the biases of people into them. They're not completely separate from humans and human thinking. So there's, I don't know, when you're dealing with systems like that, you bring in, things about incentives and how people are, encouraged to act and how they, deal with this within their own cultural group that's forming these things. And it gets, the network gets very complicated very quickly. So you're right. It's not a practical solution when you're dealing with this type of technology. But I think it's worthwhile, even so, maintaining those stories and sharing them anyway, as best we possibly can. Now, how we get to the strategy of, all right, so how do we replace them as the hegemon? That's a harder question. It's a bigger question.
We've had Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah, I was just about to say, we've had a few here and there, but they don't really get political because they try not to, because they're scientists and that's opinion and that's not how they I mean, Neil has kind of gotten political, so has Bill Nye. I think COVID made a lot of them like realize, oh fuck, this is a big issue.
They're not scientists. They're like science communicators maybe, but they're not actually scientists.
Yeah,
Neil deGrasse Tyson was his PhD in astrophysics and works at a planetarium.
Yeah, I mean,
but I mean, he's
Bill
not
Nye-
like, he's not
Bill Nye
actually
has a-
publishing. Like, I mean, you're right. Like those are his credentials, but there are plenty of people. Take Brett Weinstein, right? That son of a bitch has a PhD, but he's not out
Right.
here publishing. He's just talking shit. But Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's not talking shit, but he's a science communicator, right? He's still
Yeah.
trying to.
Well,
step
I
away
don't
from-
Maybe
know.
that's the problem. Like, how do you bridge that gap? Because, like, you have science communicators, but they're not good enough because they're not actively participating in science. But then you have scientists who don't communicate and aren't good enough because they're not actively communicating,
Right.
getting the message out. So you have this dichotomy, and you need someone to bridge the gap, which is really hard because people who work in labs don't have time because they're doing research. And communicators don't have time either because communications is a really hard job, contrary to what people like seem to think. So
Exactly. It's another set of skills, like lab work and being a really good scientist, and then also
Mhm.
like going out and being a communicator, like my favorite scientists and stuff. Like, yeah, I saw Doudna like speak, Jennifer Doudna, one of the discoverers of CRISPR, and we were talking
Mhm.
about like her PowerPoints and her speaking skills like weren't that good. I was like, whoa. Like, this, I was just thinking
they can't be a
about
hegemon. They're like
Yeah,
they're not
it's
they're not
interesting.
charismatic or like interesting to watch or anything.
Mhm.
But
They're just really good at
people like
science.
Bill Nye are super
Yeah.
interesting to watch, and Neil deGrasse Tyson super interesting to watch. But then they're not actively pursuing research, so it's kind of like they're not really scientists. But that's all we got. So I cling to them because that's all we've got, and I'll
Yeah.
take what I can get. Just like the
Agreed.
I object to them.
bacteriophage planter. Marcus, you give me shit for because it's a phage instead of a normal virus. I'll take what
Hey,
I
I
can
didn't-
fucking get, all right?
Hey, I didn't give you shit. I just said I wanted something different. But
Well,
no,
yeah,
the
but
the
we're-
phage is pog. I will.
We're
absolutely
scientists.
concede
Like
that
we're
much.
not out in the public eye that much. If the fact that someone's 3D printing phage planters, I will fucking take it, all right?
I mean, you don't know. Maybe that's just another scientist who really likes it.
True.
Yeah, here's a hot take for you. Neil
Do it.
deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye are STEM lords.
Oh no, I agree. I really I think cringed internally when I said science communicator. And actually, I was literally at an all-day science communication workshop yesterday, run by two career like communication analyst scientists. I don't really know what their title was, but they're from George Mason University. So two people came all the way up here for that workshop. But I was pained inside because their first PowerPoint slide was like, oh yeah, let's look at some examples of like science communicators, and one of them, Neil deGrasse Tyson. And I was just like, oh my god, is this going to be an entire day filled with like dumb lib shit? Like, please spare me from this. Thankfully, that's as bad as it got. But yeah,
I have
there's
another
Well, you know
hot
their whole
take.
economics school is funded by the Koch brothers, right?
at George Mason,
Yeah.
or that I didn't know. Damn.
The Koch brothers
Oh,
also
no.
fund a climate change research facility at KU. Guess what?
Mhm.
It's not really about climate change.
Mhm. But I have another hot take. I don't think. I mean, I guess I haven't used the word STEM lord or like understood. Literally just asked for the definition in Discord today. But from what I picked up from that conversation, I don't feel like they're STEM lords. Just, I mean, I guess not talking about politics for as long as they did, to me, is not really a STEM lord move. It's them wanting to be able to reach as many people as possible without people being turned off by their disagreeing with their political beliefs. And that's I don't know if that's
All right.
just me being an optimist, but like that's how I view them, having not spoken about politics until COVID happened. But I wouldn't consider them STEM lords.
Yeah, I don't consider them STEM lords for their political takes. I don't have any interest in their political takes. I consider them STEM lords because of their outright dismissal of philosophy as useful.
Okay.
And
I
they've
see
been
that.
very vocal about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but if you're at that level of education and prestige in whatever field you're in, I'm sorry, that's just a big failing in my opinion.
I
Right.
will say I gained a lot of respect for Neil deGrasse Tyson. I watched him, per my viewer Rubinsky. I watched him in an interview kind of discussion with Ben Shapiro, and they were talking about transgenderism.
Mhm.
And Neil deGrasse Tyson, I love him. And he was just like, there isn't a scientific explanation and there doesn't need to be one. I'm paraphrasing here, obviously, but that was,
Yeah.
I mean, like, I feel like if you were a STEM lord, I feel like you wouldn't have given that answer.
Also,
I mean,
Neil deGrasse Tyson has a great tweet I use in all my classes. It's actually one of my exam questions. And he says, physics is easy, but sociology is hard. Because when humans enter the equation, I'm like not citing it correctly, but basically he says because humans are involved, sociology is hard, physics is easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, yes, score.
Like, in at least that particular context of Neil deGrasse Tyson talking with Ben Shapiro, I mean, I think Ben Shapiro is so, like, the bar has been set so low that, you know,
Right.
Rush Limbaugh's tripping over it in hell, basically. Like, that's, I think, the setting of that conversation. But, you know, when it comes to, like, you know, especially with Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? Like, he took over Cosmos. Like, that was, you know, Sagan's deal.
Mhm.
And, you know, Sagan really, I think, did a wonderful job sort of encapsulating sort of the mystery and, you know, how we go about finding out, you know, what magical world is around us. Like, it really, I think, you know, reached and tugged on people's heartstrings. But Neil deGrasse Tyson, sort of the way he frames a lot of it is just like, yeah, bitch, look at all these facts. We got facts. Does it matter how we got these facts? No, you idiot. We got facts and they're right. Like,
So
it's so devoid of substance to me.
Have you watched his podcast, Star Talk? Like,
I have
I
not.
watched a significant amount of it, and I feel like maybe that was. I don't know when the new Cosmos came out. I feel like it was like 2015, but I feel like he's changed a lot since then. Because I watched Cosmos, and I've like binge watched a lot of his Star Talk podcast episodes, and I feel like, I mean, yeah, he throws out facts and, like, you know, strokes his ego a little bit, but I think he, like, if he doesn't know something or if he thinks something's really cool and we don't know why, he'll say that. But yeah, he does like to throw shit out and be like, look at this shit that I know. Isn't that sick?
I think it's one of those things.
Yeah.
It's like reading a textbook. I hate textbooks. I was TAing a microbiology.
you read the textbook?
and I had to read the textbook, like, for the class, you know, because they were asking me questions about it, and I'm pre-reading, and it's like I'm getting a PhD in microbiology, and this microbiology textbook is just putting me to sleep. It's like, and it's because of that I think the everything is just fact after fact after fact. This is this. This is this. This is this. This is this. And there's no story there. There's no, like, this is the paper that did this, and we did it this way, and that's why we know this is things. Hey, there's this big caveat here that we don't know about, but yeah, we figured this out. And it's like, that's a story. That's something that's engaging. There's mystery. There's involvement. Like, we can actually learn something from it, as opposed to just memorize this and figure it out, and then that's what it is.
I read a preprint for my micro class. This is serendipitous. I read a preprint for my micro class. We had to give feedback on it my last semester of undergrad. And I read one that was about how macrophages can induce antibiotic resistance in the lysosomes. Cool shit. Anyway, the whole paper was written as a story. Like, exactly how you described it. Like, okay, we did this experiment. We found these results interesting. So next we did this experiment. And I was like, this is the coolest research paper I've ever read. Like, I've never read a research paper that was structured like that. They never are. It's always like, okay, you know, abstract methods.
Yeah, stepwise, progression.
Yeah.
It is. It could be kind of.
And they
cool.
still had that, but it was like it was really cool.
It could be
sorry.
Like, a lot of times, like, when you're doing, you know, engineering, bioengineering, that's like an easy way to do it. Like, we iterated on this process to make this better, and now we did this. And I agree. It's how you talk about the subject, how you can kind of, like, bring people into the fold that normally wouldn't care about the subject, but it's like how we know what it is and why we know what it is, which is almost just as important than what is actually happening.
So I mentioned this in chat to Marcus, but as you all progress in your careers and start teaching, definitely remember this conversation about the importance of making the world around you magical. Because when I came here to Mizzou, I had to teach sociology of sport. God, I probably shouldn't say this because some of my students might be tuning in. Anyway, I did not want to teach sociology of sport. I begged them to give me any other class, anything. I would do anything for it. And they said no. And so I had to figure out how to make it the most fun, bizarre course to keep me entertained, not them. Like, I don't care about them. I'm kidding. But to make it something that was within my wheelhouse and also present the information in a way that made it entertaining. And so far, it's been a great strategy.
Yep. Storytelling, I'm telling you. Storytelling.
Yeah, I mean that's what they said in the science communication workshop. Largely, they basically said, try and tell stories, try and be very personal, very emotional, very relatable. Right. A lot of what they told me yesterday, a lot of what it boiled down to is in trying to ground whatever you're trying to talk to somebody else about in something that's familiar to both of you, something that is a shared component of the human experience, whether it's, death or, trying to survive or dealing with illness, something like that, regardless of what your context is. If you can actually try and relate to other people, then, and maybe even work it into a story, then you're going to be very effective and people will invest themselves in what you're trying to say. And yeah, I think in the larger scale of trying to be the cultural hegemon, yeah, we need to maybe do better at trying to craft narratives like stories, trying to craft our scientific fact in ways that actually are grounded in people's lived experience.
Is that all what conspiracy is? Is the conspiracy just a grand story trying to bring that together? It's taking a vaccine is easy because it's so easy and obvious, but man, Karl Malone, he invents the vaccine in 1990, and then has to go against the world, and he's trying to do all these crazy things. Are they just making their own stories, and we're trying to compete?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Now that you mention it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
in fact,
grand narratives.
You could even go a step further and saying, we call them conspiracy theories, but they're actual theories, right?
Hypotheses. Let's not get into this.
Hypotheses.
They're filling in all that tacit information.
Sunday. That's Sunday. We gotta save it. We gotta save it for him.
So yeah, I like the way Neil deGrasse Tyson tells stories about science and physics and astrophysics and things like that. I find them very enjoyable. I just think that he's, a conceited, hubristic asshole for dissing philosophy the way he does. I think he's wrong, and I think he's got to get one day. He's gonna find his comeuppance.
Do you think that there should be a way? We are all publisher perish, right, in academia and scientists, and that's where the scientists are, right? Where we're talking about the best scientists in the world probably, or a lot of them are in academia, and they have to publish their papers. So I wonder, you can see this with nature and science. They have YouTube videos now, YouTube channels, but they don't use them at all. They don't actually publish anything. It's sometimes maybe a 1 minute thing that they're putting. Their podcasts are incredible, by the way. They're very good. But I wonder if as a part of publishing in Nature or Science or something like that, you make it a requirement that you have to come out. We're going to interview for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It's a little 10-minute clip that could be used then in the in order to talk about it, forced out
video abstracts.
Yeah,
they've tried that in sociology, cool. And we're fucking nerds. I'm sorry,
I know.
I'm not appealing. I don't, but yeah, it takes somebody with the right charisma, skill set, etc. Professor EXP is actually one of those people, and I'm not going to tell you what his name is, but he has done a video abstract for one of his research articles because we swim in similar circles. I'll put it that way.
Have you guys heard of the YouTube channel SciShow?
That sounds very familiar.
It's
Yes.
John Green's brother, Hank Green.
Yeah.
John
Okay.
Green writes a bunch of young adult fiction like Fault in Our Stars and stuff. But Hank Green is an amazing science communicator. He cites all of his sources in the descriptions of the videos, and he's always posting videos about like new research papers that came out that are super interesting and stuff like that. So if you guys want a good YouTube channel, but criminally underviewed, of course, as science channels often are. But yeah, that just reminded me of that.
Yeah, but I mean that's a good example of what Greg was getting at, right? Like we need to sort of almost compel from within the institution, compel all brands of science
Oh, their
or even
podcast is
academia
so good.
to do like new media communication, right? Twitch, podcasts, video abstracts. We need to sort of incentivize these things to again try and reclaim part of the culture, right? If we're not actively trying to reach people with all this shit, all we're doing is just making textbooks bigger and more expensive when people need to buy them for class in the future. But at the same time, at least the specific example you gave with like a journal, that's going to be difficult because journals don't want to like invest anything. They don't want to, have to pay for some sort of interviewer to go, have a Zoom call with the corresponding author on every single publication. Like they're not going to want to do that, despite how good the idea is. That specific example might not be particularly practical, but
I think
we need to do it.
I think you need effective communicators in that position, but they need to, cite their sources and stuff. But again, the problem is you don't get enough publicity or enough of a stage for people to hear you widely enough for it to make a large difference.
So
Unlike-
I've got a couple questions for Professor Q. First is I'd not heard of the video abstracts before, so I'm curious as to what that is and what has been kind of the results of that. What is it showing, this different practice? And the second thing was, oh jeez, it just now I have a brain fart.
It's contagious.
Yeah,
Let me answer the first one, and then I'll
go
Like,
ahead.
maybe
I'll-
you'll think of it.
Yeah.
So, kind of nothing, because, and I'll be honest, I did watch about half of his video abstract. I didn't watch the whole thing. But the ones that I've seen are pretty fucking boring. I'm not gonna lie. Like it
It's so tough, man.
it's in this particular organization that I'm thinking of is in a bit of a predicament, let's say. Their membership is waning. I think they have the potential to be one of the most active organizations within sociology if they would just get the stick out of their ass, but that's a whole other conversation. But what I've done with my stuff is, so when I have a paper under review, I immediately start writing a more journalistic piece in the conversation, and then I link to the study, which has actually improved my metrics. And so this is a little tip for all you science nerds out there. I currently have a lot of very well read papers, well, at least well clicked on papers. And the only reason I think that is the case is, one, I do somewhat interesting work in that people can relate to it. And two, doing these kind of science communication pieces where I'm, kind of repackaging my work for a broader audience, and then that gets me the clicks and the views, etc. So I think there's a multitude of ways you can go about kind of doing this stuff. You just got to figure out what works best for you.
I mean, that raises an interesting question too. Like, you know, people do different stuff. You know, what if my stuff is so hopelessly like dry and boring that I think to myself, like, no one's ever going to be interested in this crap. You know, it's cell signaling and molecular biology and a cell line. Like, how, you know, that's almost what I think the university press offices should be for, to like help you do that, you know, instead of just writing some crank press release and shooting it out there that misrepresents what you do. Like, they should help you, you know, write an article for the conversation or make a YouTube video or something like that. That seems like it would be way more helpful to me. But
I agree.
Yeah.
You know, and I actually naively thought at one point in time that that's what the press release office was for. And that's not what it's for.
Oh.
It's to basically, I mean, sometimes they do that kind of stuff, but it's mostly, hey, this is what we're doing. Give us money. Like, it's kind of to the alumni, to that kind of, which has its purpose, but
it's not enough.
Well, that, and also, I've had some stuff written by people who are supposed to be doing that, and I shouldn't say this. How to say this diplomatically. I don't think they really knew enough about what it is they were doing to be effective at it, if that makes any sense. And so I think they kind of took what I was doing and anyway.
Are you trying to imply that people in institutions fail upwards?
No comment.
I'll comment. My university's president is a pretty good example of that. Dude literally got into the hot water at Purdue he was like the director of research, and he oversaw a summer study where they were trying to test the effects of salt on blood pressure in like kids under the age of 18. But there was such a lack of supervision that there wound up being a giant sexual assault problem with that study. So of course he left Purdue and got a nice golden parachute that helped him fail upwards into the presidency of my institution.
Oh my god.
So yeah. Yes, I wholeheartedly agree with that, and I will say it with my chest, Dr. Bonabun. Exactly.
Jesus Christ.
Amazing.
I got nothing.
It's like politics.
That's probably one of the most fucked up stories I've ever heard, actually. And I've heard some fucked up stories.
I know, I think there's still legal parts of it ongoing in terms of his culpability and what he was responsible for, so that's why he's not allowed to talk about it. People have literally, like, you know, in an effort to troll the president, they say, bring it up, he can't respond to you because his lawyers have told him he shouldn't, just to piss him off. So, yeah, that's the thing.
Now, there is a identified resistance strategy to push your initiatives through. Just show up to every talk. No, never mind.
Oh, don't worry. People have already gotten on that one. But the crustier leftists here have certainly utilized that strategy.
So this is something. This may get me canceled, but whatever. So my dissertation advisor, he would gather up a bunch of like leftists, and they would go troll Bob Dole, and they would sing the Flipper song. And so, you know, Bob Dole's had a stroke, so, you know, his left arm was paralyzed, but it was a way to like really fuck with him. And you know, so what you guys are doing kind of reminds me of that, so it could be effective.
Bob Dole is nobody's pushover.
So my first university was where he got his degree from, so that's a whole other conversation.
I wonder if we could make science more approachable by actually showing like real science sometimes. I wonder.
Yes.
Like actually showing like for example, I've thought for a while this would be hard, but it could work. have like a reality television show where you're following a lab.
Ooh.
Like, I'm serious about this. This is not a joke. Like,
That'd be
actually
dope.
having a lab, like all the drama of like, this is my experiment, man. Like for me, like this whole week.
It failed miserably, and now I'm depressed.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sitting there. I'm like, I was until lab until 6 a.m. and I'm doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm setting this up. I was like, it was like a 18-hour day, and I did it, and then I had to come in and all this drama of like getting all the recordings done and all that kind of stuff. And then, sure enough, like, oh, it fails. The drama, and it did fail. It was, yeah, all the algae died. So, and I just wonder if like that could be harnessed somehow. If they're I don't know.
So I would caution you against that.
Yeah,
because
I was
what
gonna
you're
say.
describing is so there's another postmodern critical theory postmodern scholar named Gita Bord who wrote about the spectacle, and it just seems like you're adding to this kind of spectacle society. Way that may not produce the results that you think they will. I get what you're saying, but
I mean, like the problem would be the IP. Like, how would you're basically telling people what you're researching, so you just give any cool idea that you would have would be scooped instantly. Like you couldn't, there's a lot of practical limitations as well. But I don't
for my field, that doesn't matter. But
so
I understand you guys are working.
Is just broadcasting yourself and broadcasting everything that you would do. As a scientist, that'd make it like really relatable. Like, this is how much work goes into an experiment. Like, do people actually realize?
I've thought about doing this. Like, I've thought about just streaming from my phone and putting it in my lab coat pocket. But then I realized there's like 30 other people that work in the same room, the same lab as I do. And I'm like, fuck, I don't want to have to ask all these strangers permission as an undergrad lab tech if I can record them.
Wait. Just call yourself a sovereign citizen. And
there you go.
I mean, it's not illegal in my state, but
see, there you go.
I want to, but at the same time, like, there's so many hoops to jump through, and like, I don't know if anyone would even want to watch that. Like, would that be boring? I'd have to like talk to myself, and people are gonna walk into the cell culture room and hear me talking and be like, "The fuck is wrong with her?"
But like, imagine reality television shows like right now. Like, imagine actually being in that household and actually just watching an unedited stream. It'd be fucking awful. A bunch of people just yelling at each other, drinking, yelling. It'd be awful. But then you have like cool music. You got editing, like jump cuts, and now people are like addicted to watching this stuff. Where it's like, will she or won't she leave me? And we're gonna watch that for 45 minutes. I feel like that there's like. Fix it in post, let's just say that. We'll just make it really endearing in post.
Then you get the YouTube /vlog /reality TV problem where you had Logan Paul filming, a body in the suicide forest. Like, there's always someone wanting a bigger sorry, don't look at me like that. There's always someone wanting a bigger spectacle. So if you have a reality TV show,
your example went over my head.
Really? You don't know about that?
No.
Oh, man.
He's a vlogger on YouTube who went to Japan for a trip and went to the suicide forest and found a body hanging from the tree and decided to film it and post it on YouTube like a fucking idiot. Anyway.
Yeah.
But like, nuts, there's always that need for a bigger spectacle, like Professor Q was saying, and like, if you bring that into the lab, who knows what's going to happen to science at that point? Like, our ratings are down this week. Like, you guys need to make a big discovery, or you need to fuck something up on purpose. Like,
But there would be the impetus, like, to actually have it succeed in the end, And it's like, I guess you're right. Like there is that. I've never thought about that. Like a producer's twist on like this. Hey man, like. You gotta make. What if this algae culture got like contaminated this week or something? Like no.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
Like what? Like why do you think the Keeping Up with the Kardashians or Jersey Shore or all those shows were so popular? It's because one, they were probably coached into being more dramatic, and two, they were fucking dramatic. So you had like all this shit going on. Like, I watch reality TV. It's my guilty pleasure. Don't tell anybody.
Yeah, me too.
But like, I don't watch it to like, I watch it to be entertained, and like, it would be entertaining to watch a reality TV show about a lab, but at the same time, like, they're always trying to go bigger next season, and I would worry about science.
Yeah, and also, I remember. I'm sorry. I remember what my second question was. It had to do with
Here we go.
Exactly this issue. If people are going to be doing video abstracts, what is your thoughts on how it might feed into more of the spectacle? And
Man, you asked a
how is that
fucking
going?
great goddamn
How is
question.
that going to
Yes.
affect research moving forward? That
So
was the second thing.
I'm going to answer this question in a somewhat indirect way, but it'll get you the answer you're looking for, I think.
Ooh, kitty.
Meow. So one of the very prominent people who follows conspiracy theories, I watch his stream a lot. He's on hiatus at the moment, but he had this like moment of clarity on stream, and it was wild because he realized that in researching and creating content on conspiracy theories, he was then feeding into this cycle of conspiracy theories. So the very thing that he was like against was actually like, because it's kind of a twofold effect, right? Like, it's in his interest for QAnon to keep going on, so he has the content, so he can keep his thing going. But also, is he creating some kind of like, is he kind of feeding into this, the spectacle? And I think, for sure, there is kind of a danger there to get the most, because I will tell you, so when I graduated, got my PhD, the first thing I jumped on studying was LGBT culture, and particularly like gay male culture, because I've seen a lot of shit. And I have not published a lot from that because there are certain things I'm like, yeah, this would probably get some attention, some eyeballs, but if I publish this, like, there's no way I can ethically publish this in a way that I would feel good about, and just to kind of like throw it out there, like there's a lot of things that I've seen with involving drug use, with involving gay chauvinism, and how those two are like very tied in together. And I just don't feel like I could do it in a way that would not be sensationalism. And also, I don't know that I would want my career to be built on kind of the exploitation of people who are really experiencing some suffering, some issues. And so I kind of ditched all of that and went in a little different direction with what I was working on.
Science.
So, yeah, I mean, it's still scientific. I mean, it's still like...
I meant like ditching your idea after years of research and just... It is what it is kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I in the end, I made the right decision.
Yeah.
But, and maybe in the future I'll come back to it. But yeah, I just I couldn't do it. So.
And then how do we make science like approachable to people then? Because it's like such an abstract concept but in doing it, I mean, everyone can do science. It's not like you have to have a degree in order to do science or a job or anything like that. It can be a way of thinking and bringing something together and testing your hypothesis and then trying it and then coming to a conclusion. Like, you don't have to. I'm saying you don't have to be a PhD in order to be a scientist, but it's like I feel like it's such an abstract term that people don't really. I don't know. It's they don't grasp or they don't touch or they don't actually feel what it is to do an experiment and a control. Like what a control. Like it's so. I don't know. It's just experimental designing. There's so many aspects of it that you can only really get once you're so far deep, and it's just one of those aspects where I don't think people understand. They don't get what's happening.
Yeah, so,
So-
at least like what my old lab used to do to, I mean, it certainly wasn't like a panacea, but we used to give like lab tours to like our community because we did a decent amount of outreach to like our local like middle school, high schools. And so we like, showed up and answered questions about like, what does a scientist do? Right. Trying to get at that very problem. Like, what's it like being a scientist? Kind of, it's almost like a mini career day, but solely for like a scientist as a career.
Exactly.
But we also wound up, I think, for the interested students who are like, yeah, that sounds pretty interesting. Like, I kind of want to learn more, or like, I kind of want to see it. We created these little like projects for them where they could, infect a cell with GFP or transfect a cell with GFP,
Nice.
from start to finish,
Very
doing
nice.
the cloning or sticking a GFP into a plasmid and then putting them in some cells in a petri dish or something. Like something very like small and simple and not dangerous. But that kind of gave the more interested folk like a really down to earth idea of like, yeah, this is what doing a little experiment is kind of like. If I like this, maybe I can consider it and go to college and learn how to do more of this stuff. Like that, I think, is a pretty good template. And I think realize in hindsight, one of my old PIs who did that, I think he was very wise beyond his years for sort of making that sort of a tradition that his laboratory did.
That was cool.
But at the same time, like just culturally, I fucking love the idea of like Gordon Ramsay running a laboratory. Like, you fucking donkey, you screwed up the PCR. What are you doing? Like,
Oh God,
You call
I
that a
quit
fucking
so
gel?
fast. I can't
You call
handle
it-
that. Oh
Look
my
at
God.
those combs. You got fucking
Oh.
dragging it all over everywhere.
Oh God, don't talk about gel combs. Oh, today was a
You
mess.
fucked it up
Dude,
again.
don't
How
talk-
hard is it?
Lab bench nightmares.
You put the TAE
Yes.
in first, and then you take out the comb. You fucking dunce. What are you
No.
doing?
So we've been reusing TAE in my lab because we're low. And we did it for the gel today and it caused a mess. I pulled out the comb and like the wells were like all sorts of uneven,
Yeah,
like
dude, that's
janky. I loaded it anyway because I'm like, fuck it, it's 2:30. I go home in an hour. Like I'm running this gel. Ugh.
Yeah, dude. See, in the TV
Thank
show,
you.
you got a camera up in your face, and you're like, "How does this feel?
I'm
How
trying.
does this feel?"
You had to overreact,
I
you have a confessional afterwards, like going through your entire in the moment
my
experience. on a
PI is
separate
gonna be
camera.
so pissed I fucked this up.
I don't think he's gonna keep me around for much longer. I might be fired tomorrow. I might be leaving the lab.
So
Commercial.
I guess like getting back to the main topic though, like is it the media's fault on like how they report on science, or is it the scientists' fault on like how we portray ourselves?
Yes.
Yep.
So here's the deal with the media. The media, you have all these people working like for Bill Maher or whoever, and they just go, "We're doing this segment. We need a fucking scientist. Like, let's do a quick Google search, right?" And the first name that pops up, or that person actually knows somebody. And so it's kind of networking. It's kind of being in the right position at the right time. Unfortunately, the institution that you're at has a huge bearing on that, because if you're at a more prestigious university, you're more likely to get, picked up on stuff like that.
Mhm.
But I do tend to see like the same 5 fucking people get all of the opportunities to do that kind of stuff.
I think
Oh,
it's
Go ahead.
I think it's just the sensationalism of like the media and competition with non-scientific resources. Like I think that's the biggest problem, is that if you have someone from Harvard, that sounds a lot cooler than someone from some rinky-dink university you've never heard of. Even if they haven't been to that university in 20 years, they have a degree from Harvard and that's fucking cool, I guess. But like that plus non-scientific sources can sensationalize their titles all they want and there are no repercussions, but scientists do that and it's like, well, obviously that's not true because this paper here. So I think there's quite a few factors in that, but
Yeah, I wonder about using science to communicate against conspiracies, like bringing people back, and I don't think that it's a coincidence that with like QAnon is this phrase of "do your own research."
Oh my God,
You know, and it's like-
no!
Fuck that phrase. That phrase. Oh, it makes me so mad.
I think
every time I
it's
hear it.
not that crazy. Like it's one of those things where it's like one of those things where people now they've completely shut down scientific research of people doing research. I feel like it's so effective. It's so they've
I saw a bumper sticker today at work that said, "Doing your own research is not Google," and I was like, "Thank you, please,
true.
God."
Which,
Ugh.
Mhm.
oh God, I have so much.
I don't know what you mean,
to say
brother.
about that.
I'm doing my due diligence like a real patriot.
I went to 3 websites that said the same thing. That ain't no coincidence, brother.
On the flip
Yeah,
side of
and-
that, one thing I do want to mention is, so I've gotten a shit ton of hate mail and it's all come from like my public intellectual stuff. So like the stuff that I've written for the conversation, and specifically the one goddamn paper on like sexual racism within the gay community. And like they found my phone number, they've left me voicemails, they've emails, like all kinds of stuff. So there is kind of a trade-off with some of this stuff. Anyway, I digress. I hate the term "do your own research." Fuck that.
Yeah,
Sorry.
my PI got wrapped up in the global QAnon conspiracy actually, and he got like hundreds of emails a
Like,
day.
what do you mean? Not like what?
I guess it's gonna dox me, but it's fine. It like did you guys hear about the vaccines and salad dressing? The
Yeah. What the fuck?
Come again?
so
Yeah.
so
So wait a
Flynn-
second. You're actually doing this? Is this no,
So okay. So
What's the salad dressing? Where do we get it?
okay, this actually goes back to my undergrad research where like we made algae that could made immunotoxins that killed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma stage 1 cells, so like cancer killing algae. And you know, I came to this lab and I was like talking to him about like these cool things that chloroplasts can do, and it's not just, you know, signaling and stress and photosynthesis. You know, we can actually create complex things inside of it. And he kind of like started talking to other PIs and stuff like that. And there's this whole field of kind of like this. It's kind of abandoned right now, but people are looking at it again. Virus nanotechnology, where maybe we can create viruses that are, create nanotechnology that kind of use viral elements. And that kind of got onto maybe we could actually produce like vaccines within chloroplasts of plants. So I'm in a nanotechnology lab. So what the idea would be is to actually kind of like deliver somehow the RNA producing or the DNA to produce the RNA within the nanotechnology as a carrier, and then that would deliver that into the chloroplast, and then within that chloroplast would then make the vaccine. Okay, so it's a plant, and then you're delivering it through nanotechnology, making the vaccine in the plant. So that gets construed somehow into Michael Flynn talking about it, and one day on his podcast, and he was talking to this clip is nuts. He's literally going, yeah, and now they're gonna make these vaccines. What it actually is, we're gonna make vaccines inside of plants. But he got salad dressing from it, salad. So he was like, so now they're like putting vaccines into salad.
That's the
or
only
something?
thing we eat plants on
Yeah.
in, brother.
Yeah. So then
Can you find this? I want to watch this
dude,
like
it's
right now.
nuts. And then he
It
goes,
actually sounds more fun than you end up with the Borg or something.
way more fun. And then the funniest part was that he goes, Michael Flynn goes, I talked to the scientist, by the way. He said that he's going to change his mind. It's like, what?
That's how
So,
science
I talked
works.
to my
You
PI.
You
I
just
was like,
change
dude, are
your
you listening to
mind
Michael Flynn now? Like, what's going
immediately.
on?
Oh, I found a clip for you actually, Marcus.
Yeah, dude.
But
it is so
you
fun.
You need to have you thought about contacting the QAnon Anonymous guys? Like,
Oh
I
god.
bet they would love to talk to you about like your stuff.
Yeah, it's one of those crazy coincidences where it's like I can't believe we actually made it into. I mean, like I've kind of had a morbid fascination with this and conspiracies for ever since I could get on the internet, and to actually make it into QAnon, like I'm pretty. Whew. But yeah, he was getting hate mail. He was saying like. Yeah, he's emailing like if anyone shows up to the lab that looks suspicious, we're getting some weird emails. So
that's so
it's
not
nuts.
controversial though. Like
yeah, I wouldn't think it is either. Obviously, yeah.
Oh, that makes me worried about researching oncolytic viruses now, because now they're going to be like, they're putting viruses in the cancer treatments, and they're trying to make a
vaccines
sticker.
right now. It's a very weird thing. And then I joined the nanotechnology lab out of I thought it was just really cool. The research is just like science fiction, and I was like, I want to do that. And so then, sure enough, man, they're delivering the lipid nanoparticles for the vaccine, and that's just. Woo! That's been weird. That's been real weird.
I mean, that just amazes me. Like, they will find whatever they want to just create a new theory around. Like, I never thought in my life a salad dressing vectored vaccine would be something that Michael Flynn of all people was talking about.
Exactly,
like,
man. RNA, PCR.
Insane.
Everyone's an expert on PCR now. Telling me about specificity of amplicons and stuff like that, like saying that you can't. That one the inventors like of PCR's clip.
Oh my
saying
God.
That, like, you can PCR up anything, and it's like, yeah, we know that. That's why we design it not to do that. That's the
Okay, well, the
People
inventor of
interpreted that the
PCR
wrong
was
way.
he's a little.
Yeah, Kerry Mullis
there.
went off the deep end.
Thank you
once
for
he
the name.
won
I
his
could not
Nobel
remember
Prize.
it.
He's crazy.
Yeah, dude
Yeah.
went into like full HIV denial and conspiracy theorism. Like,
Yeah,
it's the
went a
curse of the
little-
Nobel. Like, you get it, and then you just go insane within 10 years. That's kind of how it works, at least in biology.
I sent that.
Wow.
I sent that link to you in Discord if you guys want to watch it.
I did link it in chat as well.
Cool.
Yeah, it was nuts. It's still it's died down. He said he still gets some emails though. It pops up. Someone like a couple weeks ago or something redid the story on their podcast. So then you got a new swarm of it, and it's just like, I mean, I'll give it to these people. Like I said before, like they're actually. They put boots to the ground, man. It's crazy. They go out and they contact these people and they harass people that they feel like are in this new world order, and it's like, I mean, I wish that people, like, it's kind of a tragedy of the commons scenario where now we've kind of receded into this digital world, and now the real world is just rife for people to take advantage. You go into City Hall and it's like there's nobody young there. It's crazy. I'm the youngest person by like 30-40 years, like no joke. And it's like, man, there's nobody from no graduate students there. There's no professors there. There's nobody like really involved, and it's just sad.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I mean, I
I'm
don't
sure
want to point out the obvious that we're all here digital, but
Got him.
I mean, we're the vanguard party, as it were. Like,
I mean,
so
so
start somewhere.
Like that.
actually, we do owe Twitch a little bit of a nod or tip of the hat, whatever.
Professor Q
So-
is canceled.
They did a purge of a lot of the conspiracy theorists on Twitch. Finally, just this week. So
Wait, did they? Because I saw they released guidelines for like what they're defining as a conspiracy theorist, but there were a couple of channels in particular that I was looking at to see if they got banned, and I didn't see them getting banned. So I will check again.
yeah, so like the big one was Red Pill 78.
Oh, good, they got him.
Yeah, he's gone, and let's see. I think Jordan Sather's finally gone.
Oh, they didn't get
he's not-
Giga Ohm. God damn it. that guy's the worst. He is. I mean, he's not a Q person, but he's a COVID lab leaker who now has just turned into like anti everything science.
Oh, Giga Ohm Biological.
Yeah, that guy. That guy needs the boot yesterday. because he brought in like to the platform all of the COVID lab leakers from Twitter, and so they have now started like permeating all of the science streams, which is interesting just if you ever talk to them. But it's also just annoying because they're so deep in the rabbit hole. Like, I don't think Twitch staff has an understanding of how bad they are because it's all wrapped in biology. Like, it's, you know, antibodies and cell signaling and this and that, but people who are like intentionally misunderstanding it. So it's good that they're getting the more like broad, you know, Q adjacent rather than, you know, the niche scientific conspiracy theorists. But I didn't actually know that, Professor Q. So thank you for letting me know they actually acted on their new guidelines.
Yeah, I was skeptical.
I saw this guy.
But like
Just
Tori says is one of the bigger post January 6th QAnon people, and she's now gone. Thank God. She would have like 3,000 viewers at any given time when she was on. That's
a lot of brain rot.
Uh-huh.
So is the idea removing these people, because they still do it, they still get their stuff out, and the problem is that it becomes an even more bubbled like scenario. Like, there's a lot of new places. I mean, is there like tangible good, I guess, to removing them from the platform of Twitch to find new people? Is that the idea?
I mean, you either give them a platform or you don't when you're a service like Twitch, and giving them a platform is not tolerable for a lot of reasons, but then like taking away that platform, of course there's other ways to get a platform, but you know, when streamers go to YouTube, when they've been Twitch streaming for years and years and they go to YouTube, they start with a substantially smaller amount of followers, subs, whatever. Like, that's just the way it works. So, I mean, yes, kicking them off Twitch, one, kind of, you know, do they really lose that much? Probably they lose a significant amount, but like, I mean, they might get new people, but it won't be from what I've seen, it won't be to the same level. I don't know.
And there's a lot of dog whistling too, right? Because like, let's say, okay, I'm going to stream and talk about one of my biggest issues that I care about is child sex trafficking. Okay, so
or the Rothschilds,
and you're talking about that, and then but now
George Soros.
Like, why are you actually doing that? You know what I mean? Like, so I feel like there's ways of talking about it, and I actually read a paper talking about people that are actually trying to, you know, reduce that, you know, sexual slavery of minors, and now they're having a huge problem with all these QAnoners coming into their space.
They're getting hijacked. Yeah.
Like, kind of.
But yeah, I think deplatforming really does work. Like, from a human standpoint, it's shitty to like take away someone's, you know, livelihood probably and platform to speak their mind, but at the same time, you can't tolerate that shit being on your platform if you want to consider your platform like a decent place to be. It's like you shouldn't allow like neo-Nazis to be on Facebook or whatever, because that just gives them more platform. Like, I there was a comic that I saw that was about like giving people platforms like that, but I can't remember. I know censorship's a slippery slope, but like you can't have people,
because the QAnoners that I know, like from when they got their Reddit banned, I think, like, in my lived experience, that definitely deplatforming does work. You know, just because these conspiracy groups that I follow and that I'm in, when they get kicked off of some mainstream thing, like, they get to like maybe 5% of their original membership base.
So here's the deal. I think QAnon would not be a thing had it not been for Facebook groups' recommendations, which function off the algorithm, because the one thing that I see, which really drew me to it as a kind of like, oh yeah, I've got knowledge that I can use to explain this, was the whole like, we're in suburbia or the exurbs and we feel lonely and we need people to kind of validate us and bring us together. And that proved very effective.
If your hypothesis is true, though, and then they got banned off of Facebook, how has QAnon changed since not being pushed by the algorithm.
They waited too fucking long. They let it like grow to such a big like thing that by the time they got around to banning it, it was too fucking late. I mean, they waited till January 6th to really start cracking down.
I found the comic that I really loved about the paradox of tolerance. So just quickly, should a tolerant society tolerate intolerance? And the answer is no, because it's a paradox, but unlimited tolerance can lead to the extinction of tolerance, like the Nazis. And any movement that preaches intolerance and persecution must be outside the law. As paradoxical as it may seem, defending tolerance requires to not tolerate the intolerant.
Yeah,
And
when
I
the
think that's
Nazis
a
went
really-
to Skokie.
I think that's a really good point. Like, it is a paradox, but at the same time, you can't allow that to have a platform, because then it just becomes more intolerance later on. But
I mean, is it about stopping it from the media portraying it, or is it about educating people so that they can identify it? Because I've seen other stories and read stuff about other countries put it in their curriculum, like how to identify misinformation, how to identify
right, but that's a long-term solution.
I agree.
Right.
And you can institute that now, but it won't be another 18 years until that affects society. So, I mean, the short-term solution is not giving them a platform and taking them off platforms as they pop up, and just nipping it in the bud before it becomes a problem. And re-educating's great, but again, it's the platform thing. Like, you're never gonna have as big of a platform as these established misinformation intolerant people are, and that's the big caveat. Unless you start it young, and then they're set for success, hopefully. But that's
I applaud you.
Thank you.
But
Fucking liberals.
No, but I really like how you framed that, Amber, in terms of like a short, immediate term solution in terms of how we deplatform, and then sort of the longer term, how do we actually try and remove the need for deplatforming, where we have very few people to deplatform in the first place because we all haven't become entirely deranged. And I think what Greg alluded to this too, the country of Finland, which I think Frackle in chat has mentioned before, they teach their school children from a very young age, I think at a bare minimum, how to analyze sources, verify information, and they actually give them like exercises in terms of, how to sort out misinformation from truth. And they do it on issues like vaccines or, what's going on in geopolitics. You see an article that, X country invaded Ukraine. Is this real? Is this not real? Like, we in our education system don't do that. We don't actually teach anybody or even put them through that exercise at all. So that is very important to integrate that in the long term, because we can just ban people left and right short term. We can get out our ban hammers and just start thwacking, but people will cry censorship and slippery slope, and if there's no sort of long-term fix to underpin the short-term deplatforming, then people are just going to view it as big tech brother, they're trying to censor the truth, they're just wanting to control the narrative.
I want to also say, like, misinformation on its own and like the slippery slope thing doesn't seem super dangerous, but like, if you just think about how many people haven't gotten the vaccine and how many lives that's cost, like, it is dangerous in the long run, and it's hard to see those before they happen, and it's hard to deem like what's misinformation and what's not. But I think tolerance is and hate speech is something we can really, I think that's easier to define than misinformation.
Yeah,
right.
And I think that's the
agree.
problem, right? It's like there is a gray area of, like my fault is my problem isn't with the people that are sharing with the misinformation. Maybe like, why are you doing this uncritically? Why aren't you doing your own research? But I guess but ultimately it's the people that are actually creating this stuff, purposely disinforming people on purpose. That's the crazy thing. You'll look into these, the infographics. It's always pictures, by the way, so it's easy shared between their phones and all that kind of stuff. And then they'll have circles, red circles and stuff, and you'll look at the table or you'll look at the reference page, and it's literally not there. Like what we're talking about, like the numbers will be wrong, the graphs will be fake. The numbers won't. They'll be using numbers from one source and then comparing it to numbers from another source and stuff. It's not peer reviewed. It's just so dangerous.
So there's an infographic. I was trying to find the presentation. I've got it in. These people on the right, the QAnon promoters and others, know exactly what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this great infographic I have somewhere that basically is like, here's our plan to monetize what we're doing and make this a successful business model. So they've got it all worked out, like how to do this in a way that's going to profit them. So that's another leg of this, I think, that's real important to understand.
Yeah, I wonder if it's it's just so tough. It's just so tough, because doing, actual reading primary sources, I think that this is the way to get around a lot of misinformation and a lot of things. Is just because people ask me what news do you read, and it's like I'll read news to figure out, or a headline to know that an event happened, but then I read the primary source when it comes after that, right? So a good example that's really popular is the Mueller report that came out during Trump's presidency.
Oh my God.
When that actually came out, did you read the report? Did you actually read the report, or did you go to a news outlet and then have them tell you what it was? The Mueller report was very short. There's like a 10-page executive summary at the beginning, and the whole thing's
10
about
pages
300
is very short.
Yeah, the whole thing.
Well, that was just the summary.
Yeah, that's the executive.
Yeah, exactly.
Summary. Yeah. And then the whole
Ain't nobody
thing's
got time for
300
that.
pages. Dude, that's shorter than a freaking Harry Potter novel. That's not bad. That's not long at all. Come on.
But that's
for real.
politics, Greg. That's boring.
It's not 10% of it was redacted, so you're only talking about maybe 250 pages. It's really not that long. Doesn't maybe a couple hours out of your day? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's just
I can't read that shit while I'm playing video games, but I can watch a YouTube video on my second monitor while I play video games. So that's my shtick.
But the whole point, I feel like, is that people keep going to these places to get their digests and stuff, and there's the primary information, there's the person that reads the primary information, and then there's the person that's reacting to that person, and then it's like tertiary and beyond. That day, I was looking at CNN, and I was watching all the news outlets because it was really interesting to see how people were reacting, and there's only one person on TV that actually did quotes and actually read from the report. And it was Rachel Maddow. She read all 10 pages basically of the executive summary, all just straight. And it was kind of it was, and then meanwhile I turn into Hannity, and the first thing is innocent, first, and you're like, dang, dude, it's so deceptive and it's so bad. Oh, it makes me so mad.
I mean, no arguments here, but again, this is not anything really new. This has been going on since the 80s when they introduced the 24-hour news cycle, and there's been a lot written on this. But the concern up until recently has been, how is this going to commodify different aspects of our society? And now the concern needs to be, hey, we're going to end up destroying ourselves if we don't get a grip on this.
Mm-hmm.
Easy solution would be passing legislation that stops people from advertising shit that shouldn't be there. Why should a drug manufacturer for a highly specialized medicine be able to advertise to the public? That's ridiculous.
That should be the doctor's decision, not the consumer.
Well, yeah, and also all you're doing is really promoting Munchins by proxy, right? By operating off people's irrational fears and desires.
I mean, should we even allow advertising at all? Aren't you just exploiting people? And shouldn't we like try to stop the exploitation of people, like in general?
I mean, I'm down. Let's do it.
Yeah,
Just feels
Fuck 'em.
I block all ads. I don't watch cable.
I really don't
so-
like advertising. I really don't like the idea of it. I think.
Oh wait. Grimlow can advertise. That's it.
True. Yeah,
Is he
he's
buying
the
ads?
master ad crafter.
Yeah, he makes like Culture Jam ads. Like he has
Okay.
a ad with him like acting like Alex Jones.
Mhm.
It's great.
Yeah, he has a couple for his channel, and he's making one for mine. So you'll see soon enough the magical ad crafting of Gremlow.
I heard that discussion. I'm very excited.
I don't know. It's just people are so easily taking advantage of, and if we're gonna take that hard line, like what's allowed and stuff.
But
then
you
it's
got to
like-
think about why they're easily taken advantage of, and why telling them to read primary reports is not going to work because they don't want to. So you need to make it like
You have to make it
I don't-
accessible.
exactly like accessible but informative. Like I would love to watch a 10-minute YouTube video about the Mueller report. I would not love to read the 400-page document. As great as being able to say I read the primary source would be, it's fucking boring. Like, I'm sorry. I don't want to read 400 pages about it, but I would love to read or watch a YouTube video by someone who read it and has and just expresses like a summary of it. But I'm not alone in that. And I commend you for reading primary sources, but not everyone is going to take the time to do that. And I think that's a really important distinction and fact that you got to consider when you're saying read primary sources.
Mhm.
A lot of people don't want to.
Reading primary sources is good so long as you have the required background paradigm, right? And you told me yourself, Greg, that philosophy was inaccessible to you.
Yeah, I literally couldn't
if you-
understand it.
You would not be inclined to go read a,
Bingo.
original source philosophical text. You're not going to go out there and find Kant's Critique of Pure Reason and start reading it. Or
People don't
even-
read research papers that scientists publish straight out the press.
Yeah.
right? And you need somebody there to help you kind of tell the story of it so that you can find that interest. And you may be interested in following up with going to the original source. But this, I think, is true for most people. People have their different interests and what have you. And I would phrase it I would think of it a little differently. It's like, how do you spot a con man?
Poignant.
How do you tell whether somebody is trying to con you or not? Whether they are sincere in their conning and they really believe it, like they're a cultist, or whether they're just like Trump and just telling you what you want to hear so you can, give them money or do something for them or praise them and stuff like that. How do you spot a con man? How do you spot a con man that's laid out in written form?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Literacy
Yeah.
is what we usually talk about, and we got to teach that stuff at very early ages. And we're just in a place right now where the technology has developed so quickly enough to not allow the educational system, which is woefully underfunded, to tackle the problem.
Yeah, it's a huge tragedy of the common scenario where public education over the last, 30, 40, 50 years. So you just, really sad, like the state of disrepair that it's in. Teachers having to spend their own money in order to get supplies that they need. I mean, the amount of money that they get paid, the salaries, it's just, it's no wonder that we're in a scenario where we're in, like where science was cut. I mean, how many, the first thing that things they're cut are, sciences and the arts. And now people don't know about RNA and PCR, and now we are shoving it in their face, where it's like,
Yeah, well, I mean that's kind
I
of
don't-
where I like align with your anti-advertising take, just in principle. Like I kind of understand it's not entirely viable to get rid of all ads, but
Yeah.
that void that is created by cutting the sciences and the arts and education in general is filled by capitalistic crap. It's filled by here's the new variant of jalapeno poppers at Applebee's for $5. We'll microwave it fresh for you. Like I don't need to hear about that 10 times before the next hand egg player throws a pass 3 times and then back to another round of commercials. Like it's just so incessant and constant and omnipresent that it genuinely just feels like another sphere of influence just constantly hovering over me like a cloud. But yeah, at the same time, like nobody's going to read primary anything outside of people who are trained to do it and the genuinely curious, which unfortunately are fewer than they need to be. But we can still try, and if we're talking about science specifically, or even just academia, right? That's where the communication void exists and is needing to be filled. Like we have to have people who occupy that middle ground and try and create those accessible translations and stories and digestible forms of actual primary literature. Like that's what the science press is supposed to be, but fails at doing.
Yeah.
That was my big
I would-
stink about COVID, was that you had scientists saying things and you had news reporters trying to translate that, but like people in the middle were not helping translations, so a lot of things got lost in it. And like especially with the mRNA vaccines, like everyone I know who was hesitant about the vaccine was like, it came out so fast, and I'm like, it didn't though, but no one's telling people that. And that was my exactly, like that's my gripe with science, is that there's not a lot of translation aside from news anchors who aren't really, bless them, but they're not really like made for that, I guess.
Maybe we
And
just,
I would
like, go ahead.
encourage you guys, we often think of the media, like I think a lot of the conversation is about like the national media.
Mhm.
But when I first got out of grad school and couldn't write worth shit, at least long scientific articles like I can now, I wrote a lot of newspaper articles for the local gay newspaper, and that was really important in some not necessarily in ways that I can only now appreciate. So like, I'm a big on starting local
Mhm.
and getting in, because there's a lot of small newspapers hungry for somebody to write for them.
I wonder if we just like try to follow too much stuff now, because it feels like you talk to someone and it's like they got to have a take on like whatever's going on, and there's like a theme that everyone has to know about right now that's in any space: Twitch, YouTube, media, TV, social media, all that kind of stuff. And I wonder if that necessitates this headline reading only, not reading, the article, problem, where it's like maybe we could just,
So that's a big reason
blinder
why I
out.
don't have Facebook, don't have Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. We need an editor,
This is
right?
this is my only social media thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
You kind of need an editor to kind of like let it, like that's what an editor's role is, right? Saying like, okay, we're gonna put blinders on, and this isn't worth following. This isn't worth following.
Well, the editors are also the ones who create the headlines
Mm-hmm.
that you're
Absolutely.
reading, so that they can draw the eyeballs to it, and so they want to make it as sensational as possible.
Now I feel like they are, because they have, the whole point is to get the story out as fast and as quickly as possible because of the internet. And there are like, this whole thing with, you can actually, there's like the editing the gray lady or something on Twitter. It's like really interesting watching the editing process of already submitted New York Times articles, and you can see them like in real time kind of like navigating this space. And
wow, that's kind of cool.
yeah, so the idea is like, in a way that editors are actually being circumvented by these algorithms, because the algorithms are deciding what is actually what we're knowing about. rather than the editor being like, no, we have a reporter on this beat that doesn't make any sense, and we're not gonna cover it.
I mean, that's easy for an editor to sort of offload their job to an algorithm, right? Like they can just, hit the print button and be like, yes, we should run this. The algorithm says so. And, their job is made 10 times easier. They're working smarter, not harder in their eyes. And maybe their metrics go up. Maybe that's actually validated by some sort of, click metric or how many ads they served or something like that. Like they get to offload their work for even more money at the expense of actual integrity in reporting.
I mean,
yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I think that there's something to algorithmic concentration of the eyeballs and stuff, but to get the original eyeballs on there, you still need the headlines, and the headlines is what
that's true
attract the people, and then the algorithm takes the amount of views and sees, does some differential calculations and starts direct. The more popular a link is, this is how Google started. The more popular a link is, the higher it would, get ranked in the search engine. And it didn't matter if it was good information or bad information. It was just the more popular it was, the more eyeballs we made go to it.
And so it's almost sort of a feedback mechanism then for the editors, where they get to see what headlines they pick, how well they do.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, real time too, because they get all that. Yeah, I mean,
what was that news company that I think it was on MTV or something? They would take the headlines from Twitter and then make the stories about what was happening on Twitter, which then they sent out to Twitter, which then it became this feedback loop. I think it's talked about in Generation Light, which is a great film by Douglas Rushkoff with PBS.
Oh, it sounds really familiar, but I'm drawing a blank.
Rushkoff's he's one of these guys that's been researching the internet for 20, 30 years, and specifically marketing and how this stuff works. Sorry.
No, you're fine. I was just going to say, speaking of feedback loops and the internet, Dr. Bwint, did you know that every Wikipedia page, if you follow the first link in it, will lead you to philosophy every time?
I did not know that.
There you go. Algorithms.
Did not know that.
But yeah, if you follow the first link to Wikipedia article, in every Wikipedia article, it'll lead you all the way back to philosophy. So,
dude,
I'm being told also Hitler.
It is just an anecdotal thing, because I don't know if people have YouTube channels or anything, but you can actually see the analytics are pretty deep on what you can tell what people are searching and what they're actually watching based off of that. And philosophy, since I put those philosophy of science videos on, I can tell there's a lot of people that are actually searching for philosophy and are actually searching on it. I was like, this is I never even thought that would be a popular topic, but it's my number one most search term that people are finding my videos with. It's really weird.
Wow, that's kind of good to hear, actually.
Out of all my science content, I don't have that many videos.
Philosophy's not dead.
Yep.
Right?
The old philosophers might be dead, but philosophy, not so much.
Last week, and this is totally off topic, but it's a recommendation for a TV show. 2 TV shows, actually. One's a series, and then there's a sequel series. And this first season of the sequel series is on Netflix now. It's called Merli Superiali. And it's about a bunch of students in University of Barcelona. So it's in Spanish or Catalan, and it follows a group of philosophy students throughout their first year and stuff. And it's not a reality-based TV; it's a drama. So, there's a lot of soapy sex type stuff going on, but if you can put that in its place, it has some really good lessons about philosophy and what philosophy actually means, and how it can often help provide a lot of answers for you but it can't console you, right? And life is more than just work and things like that. It's also eating and drinking and fucking and it's pain and pleasure and all these other things that philosophy can tell you about, but it doesn't help you understand it or doesn't console you when you're hurt or anything like that. Anyway, so I recommend the series, and if you want to go to the original series, it's even better because it's set in high school and they have a philosophy teacher who's the kind of main character, and each episode is devoted to a different philosopher. And they introduce it somewhere near the beginning of the episode, and then the drama plays out in their lives, and they all relate it back to that story of the philosopher that they first introduced that session.
We had
I recommend it.
We had a psychology and philosophy professor at my teacher at my high school, and I was the president of the psychology and philosophy club. But yeah, he ended up being asked to step down for stuff. So
what? He's not all philosophy and psychology teachers or
no. Sorry, that's why I just wanted to explain why I started giggling like a child in the middle of that, because that's the only way I can cope with the betrayal. So
All right, we'll take your word for it.
How could we teach philosophy to people where it's not so meta? Because I think that this ties into misinformation. It ties into media literacy and the fact that I've learned how to think about philosophy through science because I've been doing bench science for 14 years now. So I think a lot about it in that gaze, and then I think about it I can analyze how I've thought about it, and then kind of step outside of my thoughts and then look at how my train it allows me to think about it better.
Mm-hmm.
What is a way that we could think and teach philosophy in that way? Video games are really popular. I wonder if there is a way to teach philosophy from game theory or something like that.
There already are video games that touch on stuff like that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, the first one that comes to mind. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say Time Scroll said something in the chat that film theory is the philosophy of today.
Huh.
In a lot of ways, yeah. I mean, it does combine a lot of philosophy and literary theory.
But the first game that came to mind when you brought that up was this game I played called Spiritfarer, where you're basically driving a boat with spirits on it to take them to the beyond, whatever. They never specify, they never do any of that, but they're always talking about what their lives were like before they ended up as a spirit, and it's all about dealing with death and the philosophy of death and all that stuff. And it was really depressing, but it was really good, and I'm really glad I played that game for 50 hours. But a lot of video games touch on philosophical subjects or completely ingrain themselves in it, but you just don't see it because they're not Call of Duty or those big ass AAA games. They're mostly indie games that you don't really see a lot of.
But isn't that teaching someone that they're the center of the world, kind of the main character problem that people have, and it's kind of a tragedy of the commons scenario that we're having right now? I feel like it's kind of playing into one another.
What do you mean?
There's a really good YouTube channel called Like Stories of Old, and LSOO, Like Stories of Old, and they do a lot of film kind of examination and critique, but they also do video games. And there was a series about what was it, Death Stranding?
Oh yeah. With Norman Reed
or
Reedus or whatever his name is from Walking Dead.
Right. Yeah, he played a character in the video game. And and so there's a few videos about different video games, and he relates it to philosophy, but also literary theory and a very humanities, basically incorporating the humanities into analysis of these types of games.
Hmm.
And when I was teaching at Penn State, the ethics course I developed had a project in which they needed to take, they didn't have to use a video game, but a lot of them did, and figure out how to incorporate all of these different ethical frameworks into the game if they were to rebuild it. And it was an interesting project, and people came up with some really creative ideas. But that's at the university level, not at the
Yeah.
Right.
high school level.
But like a
I
lot of
will-
video games do that, but like they're not always, the biggest games in the industry. And that's,
Mhm.
I don't know if that's necessarily a problem with the industry itself or with people as a whole, just like the whole clickbait thing. I don't know if that's the same problem or if it's a different problem entirely, but
Hey, how would you
Batman.
battle misinformation in a video game?
well, there's not, I
No,
mean,
like Batman. Batman's a great philosophical debate, that's popular about, humanity and
Mhm.
all kinds of things. Comic
I'll
books
agree.
are great. Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, someone I know one of his claims to fame is he did Das Kapital, Marx's Das Kapital, is a graphic novel.
Oh, interesting.
Greg, what were you saying about the first person thing?
Oh, I feel like I want to figure out a way to teach people to think about philosophy and kind of how they're thinking about their own thought processes and how they might be falling into these misinformation traps and these like cult-like behaviors and stuff. And it's like, I feel like a lot of video games right now, it's kind of like you're the main character kind of thing. Even in even in MMORPGs, which would be kind of like the antithesis of this. So you'd have one thing, you have like the first person shooter, like I'm gonna take on everyone in the world kind of thing, and I can take everyone down, like, and then you have like maybe these social games that you have to work together in order to solve problems, and you have to, you heal, I'll tank, I'll DPS, and these roles that you have to
But that
think
is
about.
in MMORPGs.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
depends on which facet you look at. Like the quests, sure, they're gonna be like you are the savior, and it depends on the MMO. It depends on the game. Like you can't generalize.
But I'm saying, like,
games
how could we
to
think about
you are-
philosophy in that, and like how, because these things are, even in World of Warcraft, like you're still the main character, like you are the chosen one that's like been figured out.
That didn't happen until later expansions, but
That's part of the downloadable content, Greg. Come on.
Yeah,
no,
I
that
don't
wasn't
know.
until Warlords, way later. That's a new thing.
Yeah, cause I don't know. I guess it's like Sims or something. Like would be.
Oh, The Sims, you don't play anybody.
Exactly.
You make
exactly.
a
You
family
see
and
how,
they
like,
get jobs.
You see how it is. How putting the residential next to the industrial spot gets people mad. maybe they can extrapolate. Like maybe we shouldn't. I wouldn't want to live next to like an industrial work plant. Maybe that would be a way to in my own life. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
I like how you are thinking, because this is what I've had to do for my career, because discipline like sociology, people fucking hate it. Okay,
Mhm.
we tell you how screwed up the world is, inequality exists, life sucks, we're probably going to destroy the planet, and
Currently
but-
are.
yes, but so what you kind of have to do, or at least what I've had to do, is make things sellable, because
Mhm.
I've been in primarily teaching positions, which means I need to get the good scores so I keep the job, right?
Mhm.
And I got to keep the kids happy even while I'm, filling them full of knowledge about how the world sucks. So,
So what you're saying is that while your natural inclination is to be an Eeyore, you actually have to train yourself to be a poo.
dude, so that's actually what my
That's what I've
advisor
been
used to
doing.
call me. He used to call me, he said, he used to call me Eeyore, and then I graduated, and I'm a little better about that.
Progress.
I'm never letting go of my inner Eeyore.
Yeah, it's dialectical.
I guess the point I was trying to make is that there are games like that. Like there are games that are philosophical, or you're not the hero.
Yeah.
It's just like media. Like you have to expose yourself to it, because it's not gonna pop up on your IGN news feed or whatever. Like you have to find it. So
I guess.
And I also think that
just as an aside-
those things are entry points,
Mhm.
right? You then have to get them like into the real shit at some point.
Right. So
well, not necessarily. Sometimes people just need a surface level. Like you don't have to become a philosopher to think about things in depth. You just have to have that spark lit, you know? I think, at least.
And
in my
stories.
opinion. Exactly.
one other entry point. There's a paper by Miguel Sicart, 2009. I forget the name of it. It's in my Discord if you want to grab it. It's about how to design ethical gameplay, and it takes it from a very, both philosophical and a very
I think
technical.
I've heard of that paper, actually.
And it's a really good paper. I really like it a lot because it incorporates some very recent philosophy and the philosophy of information, which I have a lot of respect for. So it's available on my Discord. I don't know if you're in there, Greg, but
Okay.
you can find it there in the library somewhere. And if not, let me know and I'll post it here in the Mystery of Science Discord somewhere.
Yeah. It would
You
be
sparked a memory. There's a guy, he was my first faculty mentor, and he was a mathematician, and his thing was gamified math. So I worked at a place where we got a lot of underprepared students, and so the math department had to figure out how to get people to enjoy math in a way that would get them through the course, basically. And so he used his love of gaming and role playing and all this, and he went to Lego's corporate headquarters overseas, and he developed this tool to help teach algebra. So
Wow.
That'd be cool.
he's a cool guy.
Amazing.
I miss him. Gaspar Porta.
Jeez. The industrial model of education fails, is what you're saying.
Again. Oh.
It astonishes me that there are a lot of people who poo-poo creativity in the classroom, and I would not have survived this long had I not had that same creative spark that drew me into my discipline. I learned to apply that in all kinds of areas of my life.
I will say that the lack of emphasis on creativity has crippled me as a scientist. It's hard to think outside of the already established box with research that is currently done or being done, especially as a young scientist, like coming into this field where, of course, it feels like everything's been found already, and you're trying to think of like, okay, what can I do that's different in this field? If you don't have the creativity, even in STEM, it's hard. And I'm crippled because of that. So I don't know if it's just me or if that's just not how my brain works, and I just missed all the creativity lessons, but
I think it's also part of academic culture in the sense that, we feel, especially as graduate students, we feel defeated that we don't have the original idea, the big idea, the one that's going to be superlative. And we want to jump to that place before we start crawling. And so we always end up hitting this wall of everything's a remix. It's already been done. So don't worry about it. Just do your own thing, put your own spin on it, and start that way. But it's that creativity it has to come from you, but it has to come from other parts of you, right?
Yes.
So, that's why, the Greek philosophy of a paideia, the schooling where you taught people how to, be physically fit. You taught them how to deal with the basics of, literature and communication and public speaking and politics, and then mathematics and, doing actual engineering
Left
type
brain, right brain
functions
isn't
and
a
work.
thing.
So having other things to do, having that well-roundedness. We have this idea of being a well-rounded person. It's those parts of you that are not connected directly to science that you can pull in to enable that creativity. So if you play guitar, if you sing, or if you embroider, or you perform, if you go LARPing or whatever it may be, there's always something else that you can draw upon as a strength.
Well, and think about it too. Like we're on Twitch, right? That's not anywhere in our curriculum. Like we're being creative in the way that, again, like bringing this back to the original topic of tonight. Like we're trying to redefine sort of what it means to be a public intellectual, to establish ourselves as organic public intellectuals, and we're using Twitch as a medium to do that, right? It doesn't necessarily have to manifest as you're a brilliant painter, or you can sing, or you're a photographer that gets their photos in National Geographic. Creativity from an intellectual
Which
standpoint
takes so much creativity.
Yeah, I mean, but what we're doing takes creativity, right? Like we're trying to accomplish a certain goal. We're trying to use a new digital media to do it, and we have to be very creative and incorporate some ingenuity into how we communicate science, right? You're playing video games and you're talking shop. Like very few people in our realm do that. Like I think you have that perspective, right? This is bringing us back to STEM lords, right? Like people are just so turbo STEM lordy that it's just nothing but doing lab experiments, and that's the only objective truth, and that's the only thing you can ever do in science. If you have a degree, you always have to be doing experiments, and that's it, that's all. And if you don't do that, you suck, and you've failed as a human being, as a scientist. Like we're trying to move away from that, and we're, I think, being creative in the way that we're doing it. So I would say just don't sell yourself short. I think Greg also kind of helped me with this when we were talking about something similar in my Discord. We can't sell ourselves short just because we're doing something that truly very few people are doing. Like we're trying to step out of a pretty rigid box that, as Buenabuen said, as grad students and as trainees, as it were, in academia, we're forced into this box. We are forced into it, contorting ourselves, breaking our bones in the process to fit the box, and we're rejecting that in some degree.
Yep. Get out of that box.
I always said the
true
best
freedom.
The best scholars either they had something going on outside of their job, or best case scenario, they had some kind of nasty habit, smoking, drinking, drugs. It made them a little bit, edgy. Anyway, I digress.
Edgy STEM lords unite.
There's dozens of us. Dozens.
I know, it's great.
Did y'all see the video that I posted with Hubert Dreyfus and AI, Heideggerian AI, and
that I didn't think I saw. I haven't seen that, rather.
If you want a good kind of slapdown of STEM lords and this idea of engineering can solve everybody's problems, that's a good video to watch.
Cool. Yeah, can you at me in Discord, like where that's posted, just so I remember it?
I don't know where it's at. I'll get it.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Thanks.
And that's how you don't be misinformed. That's it. Boom. Done.
Yeah, because we were promised in the 50s that these engineers, these software engineers and artificial intelligence people were going to solve these problems. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's definitely did not
Yeah.
happen. I remember thinking
Yeah.
in the late 90s when I got into the internet, like, man, people are going to be so informed because all the information is just going to be at your fingertips,
Mhm.
like, and it's just going to be so easy to learn things.
I mean, that is true. To a degree, that is true.
Yeah.
Like, we are very informed compared to predecessors, for sure. Like, if I have a question about anything, random or scientific, I can just Google it. And, like, yeah, my sources might not, I have to look for specific sources or good sources or whatever. But if you're curious, the information is there.
Yeah. It's just as easy, though, to find a conspiracy. And I think that's the problem, is that trying to...
I gotta push back a little bit on that. It's becoming
Really?
harder because I was trying to put the finishing touches on a presentation,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't save anything because I'm like, it's on the internet, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, a lot of the QAnon stuff is getting a little harder to find because people are getting rid of it, and so, which
Interesting.
ultimately is a good thing because I would love to stop being able to research this shit.
Take me out of my job.
I can always move on to something else. I have a really wide range of interests, so this just happens to be the one that I think is the most important right now.
I wonder
I
if
mean-
you could establish an archive.org repository for QAnon materials.
Probably. I mean, there's and actually I owe them a huge debt. The guys over at Q Origins have been great for helping me out, and they also have archived a lot of stuff related to Q. So that it's still kind of there.
It is very
I
weird.
mean, that's just such an interesting thought to me. Like, we're almost having to create a sort of, bootleg Library of Congress for conspiracy content. Like, I mean, you have to, right? You have to do that to keep track of
Yeah.
it, to catalog it, and to try and understand it. But, like,
Well,
it's so fascinating it's gotten to that point where we need to do it.
Only because of the deplatforming. Like, again,
Mm.
ultimately, this is a good move. I should not be able to type QAnon into Twitch and find
Yeah,
shit,
no, totally
you know?
agree. But at the same time too, like, it's important for academics and positions like you to have access to that material, right? Deplatforming strips you of your access to it, so you can't really study it. So, like, there's an absolute necessity, but at the same time too, like, it's wild that we're in this situation. I mean, bringing it back full circle, like, just shit, it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
I'm just hopeful. I applied for a grant, and the next phase of the research is I actually start to interview people who believe in this stuff. And I'm so excited. I want to talk to these
Nice.
people.
Very nice.
I do want to preach some hope, though, like just what I was saying earlier about there being so much information out there that is doing good, and like people like SciShow or other science communicators who are really trying their damnedest to get good information out there, and stuff like that. And I also wanted to say that I'm really excited to see what Gen Z comes up with, because they have so far proven to be some of the most empathetic and caring people that I've seen content from, for the most part. So
Yeah, it's
because they have the internet at their fingertips and they can hear stories from other people, and they can really live in another person's shoes, and I think that's super important. And I think Gen Z and millennials get way too much shit.
Yeah, I mean, I love Gen
No
Z.
comment.
Like, they're my favorite generation because.
Are you
as
one
I-
of those, Professor Q? Are you one of those people?
No, I love everybody.
That was convincing.
I love everybody. Come on.
Look, what I love about Gen Z is that if you tell them to, like, flip a cop car and you give a decent political explanation as to why they should, they won't think twice and they'll do it. but then they have
No,
to
that's
order
everyone.
McDonald's
That's
by
mob
themselves, and then
mentality.
they'll shit their pants.
I hate this generation and blah blah blah, but I think like access to the internet is genuinely making for a better society and for the most
Yeah.
part, like
I mean,
overall.
Gen Z is the most educated generation in human history.
exactly. Okay, let's hear it. Let's hear it.
I'm a critical theorist, so I always look at things from the angle of what's good about it, does it live up to its ideals, what's bad about it, imminent critique.
Mhm.
Did I do that with your generation?
Oh no, I thought we
Should
were
I see
talking
what we
about the
come up with?
internet. I thought we were
No,
talking about the
I'm
internet.
talking. Well, kind of. So I'm saying like Gen Z is like they're gonna be a great generation just because of their access to the internet and their ability to be informed.
I agree with that.
I mean, that's again, I think it's an empirical question, right? Will they end up? Because, I grew up with the internet.
96 is technically a millennial, by the way.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's the border year between millennial and Gen Z, but it's technically millennial.
Yeah, so I'm a geriatric millennial, is what they like.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, at this point, like,
I'm
it's helpful for just like birth year reference, I guess. But honestly, it all boils down to just everybody can be a boomer if they're in the right state of mind, and that is something you should not do.
Don't give in to the
Well-
fuck this generation mind rot.
Oh, no.
alright?
The only generation I say fuck this generation is my generation, because we were the apathetic generation, and even though I was out there doing activism shit when I was young, not a lot of people were, and so I feel like we fucked up. So thank you for cleaning up our mess.
Maybe.
I just realized something. This sweater that I'm wearing is older than all of you.
Fuck.
Dude, Grandma and I were literally saying in chat that sweater is looking pretty fresh. The
It does
drippy
look
sweater.
cool.
Right? It doesn't have to be
This
new.
is the indestructible sweater. I had this in high school. In the
Plus
late
one
70s.
Vorpal.
Dang.
And it's made of rayon. It's like 100% synthetic. And when I moved to the Marshall Islands I didn't need a sweater on the equator, so my sister acquired it, and she kept it. And then when I came back to the States in '95, the first place I landed, she was living in Denver in February. So I acquired my sweater, and
Classic.
it's completely indestructible. It's totally warm, totally comfortable. Nice cable knit pattern,
Yeah, you're
But-
wearing the fabric equivalent of a cockroach. When climate change takes
Yeah.
us all, that sweater will still be here.
It's made of
Absolutely.
elven mail.
It's made of something, man. I'm telling you, it's
Mithril.
indestructible. I mean, it's stretched to all hell, but
Yeah, it's indestructible, but not not unmalleable. It can still, I guess, be altered with the passage of time.
mhm.
All right, we've been at this, you guys, for 3.5 hours.
We
Like,
didn't
I want
even
you
watch
guys
any
to know.
videos.
It's just
Yeah,
been
we didn't even
talking
watch
the
any
whole time.
videos either.
Original
been talking
content.
this whole
That's what this
time.
is.
You're
I mean,
I
welcome.
mean, I had fun.
This
Y'all
is
Hope
better
Chat
stop.
had fun.
this is primary
Yeah, so-
original material.
Chat,
Primary
give
source.
Marcus money. He's starving. He's a grad student. He needs to eat.
Hey, I mean, Greg and Amber deserve the money too.
No,
They're-
no,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not asking for
And-
your
and
money.
Follow
subscribe to
sub.
Greg and Amber.
I'm not asking for your money.
And
Subs
Windworm.
on YouTube are free. These people, they're
There you
they're the
go.
ones that are begging
Hey,
for your money.
hey,
I'm
Fucking
just
hey,
vectors, man.
Hey.
subscribe on YouTube. That's all I'm saying. That's it.
All right, I think this is probably speaking of compelling people to subscribe on platforms. This is probably a good time for shout outs, so we could go run the horn, shout out your channel, and anything else you got going on. Let's start with Dr. Buenabuen.
Hey, I'm Dr. Buenabuen. I stream on Twitch Tuesday through Friday mornings, 6 to 10 a.m. We do the Philosophy Science Seminar on Sundays, 4 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And I'll be on Twitch probably I don't know if I'll move to YouTube because all of those advertisements, Greg. Those advertisements.
I pay for
horrible.
YouTube Premium, so I don't see any of them.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
See? You got to pay to get out of advertising.
Yeah.
Bougie.
Capitalism.
No, it's it's actually
Ugh.
because I don't want my kids watching, because they sometimes watch like phones for whatever reason, and like I don't want them to have any ads. That's the actual reason. Yeah.
Kids are gonna be watching Q
So we're-
content soon.
Jeez, we're making a two-tiered society as we speak. The privileged and the elite, and the rest of us plebs.
Oh, it's been that way
But,
for a while. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. So you can find me there on Twitch and here occasionally, and yeah.
Right on, Amber. You're next.
I'm on Twitch at DN Amber. I stream video games on Mondays and Fridays, and I'm here on Thursdays. And I talk about science throughout my video gaming. But the video gaming is fun, so we can't leave that behind.
Yeah, she's poggers at prop night.
And I'm fucking hilarious. So I mean, win-win.
Hey, we
All right,
said no
Greg.
misinformation here. Just kidding.
Oh,
I will fight you. I will fight you to the
Shots
death.
fired.
I already have enough people telling me I'm not funny in my life. Okay,
PvP.
I will tell myself I'm funny. PvP.
PvP IRL.
Get Overwatch. 1v1 me Overwatch.
I do have Overwatch, and they just saw it.
No.
Overwatch 2 is just coming out or something.
I know. I signed
saw
up for
that.
I tried to sign up for the beta, but the website didn't work.
Oh my gosh. All
Man,
right.
that's the first time I've heard a call to 1v1 in years. Like 1v1 on Rust intervention quickscope
I'm
competition.
a living meme. A living meme.
Final Destination, Fox only, no items.
You mean you guys don't play Team Fortress? Is that done?
A very long time ago.
No,
Oh, I never played that, but I've heard it. I've heard of it. I just never played it. Anything before like 2015, I was way too up Wow's ass to play anything else. So
Anyway, my thing is the URL is thepeer.review. So I have a YouTube channel doing science stuff, cool stuff that nobody else is talking about. Subscribe. Doesn't cost you anything. It's free.
follow. It doesn't cost anything.
All right,
I found
Professor
you.
Q.
I found. Yeah. So I'm Professor Q. I'm a visiting assistant professor at Mizzou. I'm working on a book on electronic dance music culture and how it became commodified and turned into a corporate culture industry that I just finished the intro on today. Fuck yes,
You wanna
baby!
interview me? I'm doing all those massives. I was
No more.
Insomniac events. Oh my god.
Nope.
They're a key player in my
Oh,
My
I'm
book,
gonna
but-
read. I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna read your paper for sure.
Yeah, and I researched QAnon, got a couple things out about that. Working with the Australian government now on
Whoa, cool, man.
Yeah, this is like a new development as of today.
Whoa,
On
congrats.
Are you at liberty to discuss?
So there's a group of researchers that are monitoring far right activity, and so the Australians want someone from the States who knows about gay stuff and conspiracy theories and right wing extremism.
Gay
And
stuff
I'm
and
like,
conspiracy.
I love the idea that they're like, we're starting to get fucked up, but you guys are like way overboard. So can you like
Oh,
help us?
it's
I
true.
can just imagine.
They're like, you are our future, so we want to prevent this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah.
I
just
love
imagine,
your
like,
synopsis.
A conversation in like the Australian government roundtable being like, yeah, we need an American that knows about butt stuff and like crazy people. So where do we find
Who
one
are
of
we gonna
those?
find? Who does this?
Butt stuff. I love it.
I found someone. The only one. Let's get it. That's great. I love that.
Yeah,
So,
that is awesome.
that's
That's really
cool.
cool news.
Yeah,
Congrats.
that's
I mean, it doesn't pay anything. It's just merely for the common good. But
I mean,
you
that's
know,
clout, man. You can be like, yo, I helped the
Yeah,
government
that's
of
legit, dude.
Australia not devolve into even more of a crazy penal colony, you know?
But yeah, so that's kind of what's up. And you can't find me anywhere but here Thursdays.
Boom. Dude,
That's the way I like it. And Sundays.
Oh, I can't. I have so much on Sunday. Since we missed last week, I'm not even kidding. I have a lot to talk about. I'm really excited.
Oh, so you guys did miss last week?
Yeah.
We had to cancel it. Like 3 out of 5 people just I'm sick. I can't do it.
Man, I was fucked up. I'm sorry.
Lab was bad, but now I just submitted my manuscript changes and stuff for the month, so I'm good. And I've evolved. I've changed my thinking on something. I'm not gonna. I mean, this is a teaser. It's a trailer.
No spoilers.
Yeah. So I can't wait to talk to you about it. So it's gonna be cool.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, I'll go ahead and round it out by plugging this Saturday. I'm doing a charity stream with a bunch of other streamers for the Transgender Law Center to help combat the bullshit laws that were passed in Texas, and I think to some extent also the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida. So tune in 12 p.m. Eastern to 3 p.m. Eastern. Most of you in chat are already watching the channel where this will be happening. I'll be playing Elden Ring. I'll be donating $1 per death, at least up to 100 deaths, depending on how much money I feel like removing from my bank account. So that's going to be exciting. And Greg has also committed to matching whatever I donate. So that is going to be a good time, I think, had by all. So be sure to tune in and make fun of how bad I am at Elden Ring, because I'm not a From Software games player at all. I played Sekiro for 10 minutes, so this is going to end poorly for me. All right. On that note, I think we could probably go ahead and call Ministry of Science. I think this was number 12. I think I remember how to count to 12 again.
Yes, 12.
So thank you all for being here. Very much appreciated. And I think this topic is something we'll assuredly talk about again in the future, because there's just so much that we can't cover all of it in a night. Not even close.
Very true.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, we'll have a good stream, man.
All right. Yep.
Yeah,
Thanks for hosting, Marcus.
Of course. Good luck and stay safe.
All right, everyone. That was fun.